Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of What If Deku Trained Under Stain? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. Chapter 1. So far, Izuku Midoriya was 4 when he came to the realization that not all humans were created equal. His face stung and throbbed after the beating he took. The tears of the kid he attempted to defend were but a meager consolation in the face of his overwhelming weakness. Was there something he could have done different? Was there a way for him to come out of that fight victorious? Any way at all? Could he have tried to dodge on the left instead of the right? Did he even have the possibility to choose a path, or was it simply written in front of him? Was he destined to just walk forward toward his set destiny, head low and weathering whatever the world threw at him? Izuku Midoriya often thought about this concept, about the chaos of life. Why him? Why was he the one to be born without a power? Laughed at and casted away, he often wondered how things could have gone in different circumstances. Maybe if his mother married a different man, Izuku wouldn't be like this. Maybe if he was born earlier or later, he wouldn't be like this. He often wondered about the possibilities. Every step taken was a step in the unknown. In all its predictability, life had a way to shake things up at the drop of a pin. Like the flapping of a butterfly's wings, a single choice opening a path into the darkness. Izuku Midoriya unknowingly diverged from the road he was walking on, the day he decided to go home after he met the greatest hero of all time, and got his dream destroyed, instead of lingering around in the city. Izuku Midoriya came home, forcing a greeting for his mother out of his mouth, and climbed up in his room. He put down his backpack at his desk, shed the jacket of his uniform, and then fell face down on the bed. He cried, silent. The words kept looping back in his head, like a broken record. You can't be a hero. I can't be a hero. I can't be a hero. I can't be a hero. There's nothing wrong with dreaming, but you need to face reality. There's nothing wrong with dreaming, but that is all that it can be. Just a dream. I can't be a hero. Izuku Midoriya cried, silent, and let the broken pieces of his dream go. Somewhere in the world, a butterfly flapped its wings. The week after, Kaken ended up surrounded by people, even more than usual, after he came back from the hospital. Dude, were you scared? How are the heroes from up close? Were they as cool as they look? Man, I bet they all were impressed with your quirk. You already have a foot in the door. I'm glad you made it. Did it hurt a lot? Kaken's laugh had a strained note in it, but it disappeared by the time he spoke. Of course I wasn't scared. It wasn't so bad. They kept me in the hospital just 'cause they are all a bunch of worrywarts, but I'm fine. A stupid pile of sludge ain't gonna stop me. Liar. Izuku kept his head low, ignoring the ruckus behind him. He was writing down some notes about empty lady old habits die hard but without putting any real effort in it. Focused back on them, tuning out the chattering, until a hand slammed on his desk, making him jump. Oi, Deku. Kaken slurred, irritated. Still writing this sheet? Haven't you given up, yet? Try jumping off the roof, maybe you'll have a quirk in your next life. He doesn't fight back, when Kaken slipped the notes from under him, scoffing. You really are a lost cause, he said, rolling his eyes. Here. He launched the notes in the little group of people. Whoever caught it, started to read it aloud, mocking giggles rising along the words being spoken. Izuku kept his head low. The days blurred into one another in a single gray cloud. Monotone, unchanging, uncaring. Words didn't hurt anymore. Lie. They do. They hurt all the time. Punches didn't hurt anymore. Lie. They do, they always hurt. It was a subtle shift. Mom did not realize anything was wrong or different for the longest time. She wished him a good day every morning, welcomed him back with a warm meal. Gave him space as he sat in his room and studied. Izuku moved mechanically, as his soul dried and crumbled a bit more every day. The pain and sadness receded slowly, leaving place to a hole full of nothing in him. 1 month went by, then 2, 3. He tried to fight back at first. He tried to think what he could do from now on. All Might was right, wasn't he? Just because he couldn't become a hero, it didn't mean he still couldn't try and do something to help people, to bring a change in this world. But what could he do? He was just a quirkless kid. A quirkless kid in a world that seemed to value and celebrate only those that made noises and colors. The flashier, the better. He was a small, scrawny quirkless kid in a world of superhumans. He might as well be an ant. He stopped thinking about his future. What was the point? All that was in front of him was a boring, anonymous life. He'd go to a high school, get good grades, and then move to a university. He'd find a boring but well-paying job, maybe find a nice girl down the line to have a family with. Assuming any woman could possibly desire a life by his side, let alone have children. It'd be a boring, normal life, lived under the radar. Kaken would forget about him, all his classmates would forget about him. At some point he'd die, after living his anonymous, boring life, and become just unnamed dust in the wind. Years of nothing, but a waste of time and space. Why waste energy trying to make plans for the future? Going to school became harder. He didn't want to leave his bed in the morning, he just wanted to stay there and never move again. During the weekends, he would do exactly that. Mom let him be, assuming he must be studying, but he just spent his free days like that. He could go out there having fun. With who? He didn't had any friend, but instead he stayed in his bed, a ball under the covers, as the time ticked by. Food stopped having any taste. It all felt bland and uninteresting. Sometimes he simply wasn't hungry at all, and whenever Mom wasn't home and he had to cook for himself, he couldn't bother. He just skipped the meal. Much easier that way. The world was gray. Was it always so gray? It was as if everything was covered by a thick layer of dust. Izuku wished he could stop existing. One day he lingered back at school, in the empty class. Just one more day that went by, as usual. His classmates turning him into the butt of all jokes, shoving him around like a doll. A little thing to have fun with. Ah, so funny, playing with the little quirkless toy that won't fight back. When he finally stood from his desk and exited the class, he took a left instead of the usual right. He climbed the stairs up, the door to the roof opened with a whine of metal in its hinges. The air was crisp as he walked toward the iron railings. Climbing over them was easy. He stood there, on the thin belt of cement between the railings and the nothing. He looked down. Would it hurt if he jumped? Or would he just die on impact? Was the school roof high enough to end it quickly and efficiently? His toes stuck out in the nothing, curling a bit. It would be so easy to take a step forward. So easy. His phone rung, making him jump in his skin. He slipped, instinctively turning and holding onto the railing for dear life, as one leg hung off the roof, the other just barely propped on the cement. Cold sweat broke on his forehead and his heart shoot up to his throat, beating painfully as he took in a series of short, panicked breaths, awkwardly twisted with his arms circling the bars in an iron lock, one leg swinging into the void. The phone kept ringing. It must be Mom, she was the only one that called him. Slowly, shivering, he managed to climb back up, standing on shaky legs, before scaling the railing back on the safe side. Nausea clawed at his stomach violently. The phone stopped ringing as he stumbled back into the school, down the stairs, making it just in time in one of the bathrooms to vomit in the sink. When the spasm of his stomach subsided, bitter liquid trailing down his chin, he slid on his knees on the floor, rough, wrecking sobs shaking him. The day after something felt different. Murmurs followed him when he entered in the class. He kept his head low, as usual, as he made a line for his desk. The teacher wasn't there, yet. Izuku put his bag in the usual place. Deku. Kaken growled, irritated, stepping by his side. What the f did you do yesterday? Some shithead says that you almost jumped from the roof. Izuku's heart skipped a beat, but his indifferent expression didn't change as he turned a small look on Kaken. He looked angry as usual. What if I did? Izuku replied, voice so low it was barely above a whisper. Kaken recoiled, eyes widening a bit. What the f dash? He replied, much louder than Izuku. What the hell is wrong with you? You creepy but son of Midoriya. The teacher's serious voice interrupted, effectively shutting Kaken up instantly. In the principal office. He still kept his head down as he silently obeyed, exiting the class, feeling the burn of dozens of eyes pointed at him. He still kept his head down as the principal went on a tirade about mental health and asking for help before doing things you will regret, sounding like he did not quite believe in those words himself. He still kept his head down when they finally let him go, and Mom was outside, clutching a handkerchief to her face, cheeks red and eyes full of tears. "Dear," she sobbed, hugging him. And for the first time in months, Izuku felt something. An almost blinding rage toward those that thought they could meddle, that felt the need to call his mother and tell her that he attempted to kill himself. Couldn't have they left her be? Was there really any need to let her know? She was babbling something incoherent through her tears, her voice muffled against his shoulder. Izuku realized he was just standing there, hands limp at his side, and he forced himself to hug her back. "That's what you are supposed to do, right? Hun, why didn't you tell me?" She sobbed, a bit more clear. "I could have done something, I could have. Oh, Izu, please talk to me." "Mom." Izuku managed to force out, voice raw. "I'm sorry they made you worry so much. I don't know what happened, there must have been a mistake." "What?" She exhaled, pushing gently against him to look up in his eyes. Izuku subtly shifted his gaze away, just barely. "What do you mean?" I would never do that." He lied, and the words rolled out his mouth with such ease they almost scared him. "Whatever they saw, it wasn't me. It was a mistake. I promise." "Izuku." She replied, trembly. "Are you sure?" "Dear, if there's anything you need to speak about." "I'm sure, Mom." Izuku interrupted her, forcing a small smile on his face. He wasn't sure if he succeeded, but she looked relieved, so he guessed he did. "Everything is okay." Tried to jump and couldn't even go through with that. Someone said from inside the class as he lingered in front of the door. "He really is a Deku." Izuku stopped going to school. He didn't tell Mom. Their mornings went by unperturbed. Izuku would enter the kitchen in his uniform and with the usual backpack. He'd leave it by the door, eat breakfast with Mom with the small TV on as they watched the news. He'd wish her a good day, putting the backpack on his shoulders and getting out, taking the usual road to go to school. He'd slip in a small, ignored little alley and go elsewhere after a couple hundred of meters. He had no idea for how long he could keep it up. Surely one of these days someone from school would call to ask Mom why wasn't he attending classes anymore. Or maybe they just assumed Mom must have gotten him admitted in some kind of hospital after his suicide attempt, and leave it at that. No one wanted "student committed suicide" in their school's resume. They probably were relieved the issue was taken straight off their hands. Izuku soon became well accustomed with the most hidden, out-of-sight roads of the city. Much easier to avoid people asking him why wasn't he in school, that way. He'd wander with no goal in mind, observing life bustling around him. For the first time in his life, he noticed things that never really registered in his mind before. Homeless people drifting at the edge of society, avoided by most, just trying to function as well as they could. Snippets of conversations reached his ears, letting him into a world of bitterness and pettiness he never thought about before. People walking alone with a dead gaze that mirrored exactly what Izuku saw in his own eyes every time he gazed upon his own reflection. Petty criminals giving heroes a wide berth, sly and capable in hurting others. Heroes complaining about how annoying the work and the people could be when they thought themselves away from the prying ears of civilian humans, singled out because their quirks didn't align with the general consensus of what a good person is supposed to be. Was it any wonder that the criminality rate rarely got down despite how many so-called heroes were out there? The more he looked, the more bleak everything seemed. How dumbly hopeful had he been, but a handful of months prior? How naive of him to try see the best in people. To think he could be a hero, that he could make a difference. And yet he kept going. Despite the fog surrounding him, despite the fact he wished he could just poof out of existence, despite how much he wanted to roll up in a corner, sleep, and do nothing else. One day he helped an old man, deep lines in his face and sadness in his eyes, stinking of someone living in the streets, by buying him food with the little money he had. Another he tackled a robber, gaining a bloody nose and a tearful thank you from the lady that got her purse back. He jumped into a fight when a bunch of kids only slightly younger than him were trying to trample on another just as small kid. He growled, "Stop," at a mother berating her young child way beyond what should be acceptable, gaining back a hateful look and a stony invite to mind his own FNG business. It did not matter just how barren inside he felt. There was still this tiny part of him that simply could not turn away. That pushed his feet to move on their own. That screamed and yelled, incapable of accepting reality. He kept wandering late into the afternoon. Got home as if he just spent another ordinary day at school. He wandered and wandered and wandered. Oh, Mom said, her concerned tone of voice snapping him out of the usual days surrounding him, filling his head with a vague buzz of white noise. That's terrible. What? Izuku replied, shaking his head vaguely. I wasn't listening, sorry. The news they reported an homicide, a pro-hero, she sighed, a little frown emerging on her face. It's always such an unsafe world to be in, please, be careful on your way to school, okay dear? Okay, Mom. Izuku replied, voice carefully trained to appear normal. I will. Izuku's precarious world came crashing that day. He got back home at the usual time. Nothing different. Except once he stepped in front of his house, a couple of cars he wasn't familiar with were parked outside. Paying it no mind, he opened the door, his set of keys jingling. He called out as usual to let Mom know he was back. When he stepped by the kitchen, the principal of his school and another man he didn't know were standing there, Mom sitting at a table with wet eyes and cheeks. Izuku, she exhaled, trembling as he looked at them with wide eyes. Have you been skipping school all this time? He knew it couldn't last. He knew. And yet, the three set of eyes trained on him burned on his skin. He looked down, lingering by the door, nervously clutching at the straps of his backpack. The fact he was still wearing the uniform as usual made him feel even more out of place. His silence was the only answer they needed. Not that Izuku could deny reality, in any case. We will leave you to speak with your son. The man Izuku didn't know said, voice low. If you need anything, you have my number. They walked past him without a word. The entrance door clicked open and then close. Izuku didn't move, hands still hanging on the straps of his backpack, face tipped down. He heard the scratch of the chair moving and soft steps in front of him. You lied. Mom whispered, voice broken. You lied to me when you said it was a mistake. She sobbed, her voice getting higher. All this time it's been a month, Izuku. A full month you've been going out, and I thought that you were at school, safe, and instead you were out there, in the streets. Anything could have happened to you. Do you realize how dangerous it was? She angrily sniffed, before continuing. What have you been doing all this time? Did you got yourself in danger? Are you doing drags? What? No, Mom, Izuku finally found words, hands tightening around the straps. I've been walking. Just walking. The whole day. Izuku shrugged. Something must have snapped in Mom, because she grabbed his shoulders, rough in a way she had never been before, and pushed him down on a chair. I don't want any more lies. She almost shouted, tears streaming down her cheeks. Izuku, I want to know what's wrong. I want to help you, please. Tell me how I can help you. She added, her voice lowering, breaking. I'm not mad. I'm worried. Baby, I'm so worried for you, please. Tell me what I can do to help. Izuku finally managed to look up, meeting her eyes. She recoiled violently. Whatever she must have seen in his gaze. I don't know. He replied flat. I don't think there's anything anyone can do. Baby, don't say that. She sobbed, a fresh wave of tears running down her cheeks. There is always something we can do. I'm sure there must be something we can do, Izuku. Please, I need you to work with me. You have to tell me what you feel. I don't. Izuku bit back, frowning. I don't feel anything. I just want to stop existing. The words rung true to him, and he didn't think they were so terrible, much better than outright saying he wanted to die. And yet, Mom released a whine, like a wounded animal, hiding her face in her hands as she suddenly fell down kneeling, like her legs simply stopped working. Izuku, she wailed, finding his knee with a shivering hand. Oh, my boy, my baby boy, why? He could understand her reaction, Maybe mom has always been very emotive. But this goes beyond that. Izuku, why didn't you tell me? She sobbed, leaning in to rest her forehead on his leg, her voice sounding like her entire world came crashing down. Another sob wrecked her, as Izuku stood there, unmoving, clammy hands a tight fist on his thighs. Her sobs seemed to never stop, until she finally took a deep, trembly breath, calmed herself down, and slowly climbed back up on her feet. She looked like she just came out of a funeral, and yet she forced a small, frail smile on her lips. "It's okay, baby," she whispered, gently tucking a stray tufty curl behind his ear. "It will be okay. We will find someone that can help you, okay? Mom isn't going to let you down anymore, I promise." Izuku blinked, frowning vaguely. But his confusion didn't seem to be apparent to her, as she caressed his cheeks almost frantically, staring at him with watery, almost far eyes. "First thing tomorrow morning we'll go speak with your doctor, okay? I'm sure he will be able to point us in the right direction, and then I'm sure we will be able to go back to normal soon. You will be able to go back to school. You're so smart, I'm sure it will be no trouble for you to catch up." His stomach gave a painful churn, as he observed her starting to pace back and forth in the small kitchen, like a caged pet, mumbling to herself. He observed, silent. Later that night, lying in bed, Izuku stared at the ceiling of his room. The posters and figurines around him were still there, almost mockingly. He kept mulling over Mom's words. Going back to normal, getting back to school. He felt nauseous at the mere thought. Why should he go back to school? Everyone hated him there. They probably had the best month of their lives without Izuku around. What was the point? His life had no meaning either way. He had been condemned from birth. Nothing he could do will ever change that. He was born a Deku, he will die a Deku. Was it really so wrong that he wished he could stop existing? Sleep eluded him, leaving him jittery and tired, eyes burning with the effort to keeping them open. He felt as if he was slowly losing his mind, forcing himself there, attempting and failing to just don't exist, even if only for a few hours. He finally gave in, throwing the covers off of himself. The clock on his nightstand informed him it was just barely past 3 in the morning. He had time. He could go out maybe. Taking a walk would tire him out enough to allow him to sleep. Or if it doesn't, it would at least distract him away from the thoughts. Mom didn't had to even know. He slipped silent as a ghost out of his room, down the corridor. Grabbed his keys and put on his shoes, not making a sound. Clicked the door open and close oh so softly. Once more he hit the streets. Muzutafu at night looked like a different city. Far less people loitering around, far more unsavory-looking individuals lingering, grouping up in dark corners to speak in low voices. Most of the time, Izuku's steps echoed in the dark and silence. He got some odd looks along the way, but no one stopped him. He walked, mindless, moving down on now extremely familiar roads. It maybe looked like a different city, but it still was his city. He didn't keep track of the time. He figured he could make a loop and go back as soon as he saw the first lights of day over the horizon. He knew he was simply not going to sleep that night. He got snapped out of his mental fog when he heard a whiny gurgle and a stifled call for help. Suddenly his senses seemed to step in overdrive, and a pungent smell of blood reached his nostrils so strongly he wondered how he did not notice it earlier. He followed, his feet moving almost on their own. The alley was dark and uncomfortable, so tight he barely fit in. Only vague blades of orange light managed to cut in the cramped space, rendering visibility extremely low. "Please," a watery voice begged, barely understandable. "Should have thought about it sooner." A deeper voice replied, impassive, "Goodbye." Izuku managed to saw it in the dark. A crumpled figure on the floor, someone towering over it holding an actual katana, blade pointed down. He's going to sink the blade in, Izuku realized, faintly, heart shooting up in his throat. He's going to kill. "Wait!" Izuku yelled, raw, the words rolling out his throat. "Don't do it." "How did you had a sidekick?" The deep voice asked, vaguely interested. "I had no idea. He's lucky he's so young. I'm going to spare him in any case. Stand back, kid. I have to purge this world." Izuku didn't leave him time to finish the sentence, barreling down the tiny space of the alley. His move was surprising enough that the man with the katana crashed on the floor, the blade skidding on the cement with a strident noise of metal. "You got a death wish, brat?" The man with the katana yelled, irritated. "I don't have any business with you. Now scram, let me finish my job." The man attempted to shake Izuku off, but Izuku grabbed his arm and held on with all his strength, eyes squeezed close. The man growled, his movements hindered by the tight space, until he managed to grab a fistful of Izuku's hair and violently yanked. Izuku let out a choked grunt of pain, jerked away and releasing his grip enough that the man shook him off, launching him on the floor. "You goddamn brat, now my prey, it's gone because of you." The man barked, picking up his katana. "Look how much good it did you, attempting to save that sack of shit. He left you here with me, now stay put, I'm going to catch that guy." Izuku rolled on his belly and circled his arms tight around the man's calf, fingers firm behind his knee. The man hissed, "Let me go. I'm starting to rethink my choice of not killing you." He attempted to shake him off, but Izuku held on, even when the man's tibia painfully crashed against his nose. In a second, Izuku found himself yanked up by the neck, hovering 15 centimeters off the ground, barely capable of breathing. A kid might as well become a target if they don't step aside. The man hissed, glacial. "And you've refused to do so. You asked for this." Something sharp poked Izuku's chest, near his heart. Izuku went limp, and waited to feel the blade sink in. But nothing happened. "Why are you not attempting to fight back now?" the man asked, his voice a mix between perplexity and wonder. "What the hell are you doing, kid?" Izuku didn't answer. His heart was racing in his chest and he was struggling to breathe. He ran in, unable to stop himself when he knew someone was about to die, but if it was him, then it was okay. The silence stretched, the tip of the blade still vaguely caressing Izuku's chest. Then the man put Izuku down and took a step back. A weak ray of orange light hit him. The man was wearing a sort of mask, looking more like a ragged bandana, that fell almost all the way down on the floor. His bloodshot eyes were intense, irises a deep red. A scarf, just as red as his eyes and ragged as his mask, was rolled around his neck. Messy black hair framed his pointed features, and for what little Izuku could see, the katana wasn't by far the only blade this man carried with him. Their eyes met, and the man squinted as he examined Izuku's expression. "You look like someone that wants to die," the man said, blunt. "Were you actually with that guy? Or did you just jump in hoping I'd put my sword through your chest?" "Neither," Izuku replied, voice like gravel. "I just didn't want you to kill a person." "So you didn't know him?" "No." "Why then?" Izuku's eyebrows scrunched in the middle as he held the man's gaze. "Because killing other people kinda SCKS? Did you miss that lesson in school?" he replied, sarcastic. The man did not reply for what felt like a long minute. "You are a weird kid," he finally said. "How old are you?" "None of your business," Izuku quipped back. "Didn't you want to kill me or something? Go on with it." The man seemed to frown under his mask. "I don't kill children. You told me you didn't mind like 3 minutes ago? You don't seem all that convinced of your ideals." Izuku immediately replied, crossing his arms. "I especially don't kill shitty, sarcastic children." The man huffed. "If you want to die so badly, jump down a roof. I'm done here." The words hit Izuku like a sledgehammer. He tensed violently, finally breaking the contact with the man's eyes. "I tried, and couldn't do it in the end," Izuku whispered, shifting his hands to hug himself. "Everyone saw it. Saw what a coward I was. They teased me because I couldn't even kill myself right." The man stood there, unmoving, despite his declaration of being done. "How old are you, kid?" he murmured, though. "Does it matter?" Izuku exhaled back, tipping his face down. "I'm just tired of everything. I want it to stop. I don't want to exist anymore." "Do you have family?" "Only my mom. She'd probably be better off without me." "Friends?" "No." The silence stretched once more, so heavy it was almost difficult to breathe. "If you really are so done with your life, why did you run in to save a person you didn't even know? Why did you care?" "Killing's wrong." Izuku muttered, almost childish. I just moved on instincts. He finally looked back up. The man was regarding him almost interested, now. And you? Why were you trying to kill that guy? I took on an oath. The man replied, serious. To purge this world of fakes and false idols. Of people taking the word, hero, and twisting it to fit their selfish desires. Our society is rotten to the core and full of worms, that feasts on a fame that's undeserved and a glory that they should not claim. I've chosen the blades in order to clean this society of those that have stained the ideal of what real heroes are by demanding money for their services and using their quirks selfishly. Izuku blinked, tilting his head on his side. That's a mouthful. And you think that you can do all that alone? By killing people? He asked, unable to help himself. I mean, not that you are entirely wrong, in theory, but I don't think killing is quite the right way to go at this. And working all alone will only make you super slow. The man sighed, almost amused, shaking his head. Someone had to do it at some point. If it wasn't me, then who else? He replied. I don't pretend you to understand, kid. But I do. Izuku interrupted, flat. I do understand. There are so many people out there only thinking about climbing a popularity chart, using their quirk inappropriately, not because they want to help others, but because it serves them and their egos. But isn't a hero supposed to work in order to help and protect? Even if it brought them no glory? No matter the circumstances or how difficult it will be, a hero should always do everything in their power to help others, even if it meant butting their noses in other people's business. Yes, exactly. The man said, satisfied. So why did you even ask me why I ran in to save that guy? Isn't that exactly what a hero should do? The man turned to look down at him with vaguely wide eyes. Do you want to be a hero? He asked, careful. I wanted to. Izuku murmured. But I can't. Why not? I'm quirkless. I'm weak. I'm just a deadweight. Izuku listed, shrugging. I'm useless. I can't do anything. Even All Might told me I can't. The man's eyes seemed to almost lit up. You spoke with All Might? I met him months ago. Asked him if he thought even someone like me could be a hero. He said no. Izuku added, flat. It destroyed my dreams. Becoming a hero, it's all I ever wanted. And now here I am, speaking in the dead of the night with a guy that you are that serial killer, right? Stain. Yes. Stain replied, promptly. Since you know who I am, don't you think you owe me the courtesy to tell me your name? Call me Deku. Deku. Okay. Stain sighed. You're just barely a vague idea in your mother's head. Go back home and try to find a way for yourself to live. You're far too young to have such a strong death wish. I don't want to. Izuku barked, surprising even himself. I don't want. She'd only worry herself sick. She'd live so much better without me around. And no one else cares about me. No one would miss me. I'm okay with dying. I don't want to go home. Stain sighed, grumbling. This is why I don't like brats. Listen, it's not a request nor I'm asking you gently. I don't give a F about what you do. Go home or don't, I really don't care. He turned, walking away. Izuku gaped, watching his back get further and further. He followed. He didn't know why. He didn't want to think about why he followed. Maybe it was the way Stain didn't skirt away from him. His sincere, unmoving bluntness in front of Izuku's words, the same kind of words that but a handful of hours earlier turned his own mother in a sobbing mess. Stain reacted as if he understood. There was something in those deep red eyes. What the hell are you doing? Stain hissed, incredulous, turning just vaguely toward him as they walked down the small alley. Making sure you don't kill anyone else. Izuku promptly replied, tailing after him. It wasn't a complete lie. I may agree to a certain extent to what you say, but that doesn't mean that I will let you just run around gutting whoever you like. You goddamn get lost. Or what, you'll kill me? Izuku deadpanned. Big FING deal. I'm shaking in my shoes. Stain turned so suddenly Izuku hit his face against the man's chest, forcing him to come to a stop. He looked up, meeting flabbergasted red eyes. You're the craziest brat I've ever met. Stain commented, vaguely irritated. Fine. Follow me around. If you can keep up. And with that he suddenly jumped, agile like a cat. He climbed up the walls of the alley, using anything at his disposal with an ease that spoke of expertise, disappearing up into the night. Izuku glared. Maybe he couldn't climb goddamn walls, but he had other weapons at his disposal. Stain was underestimating him just like All Might did. He'd show him. Somewhere in the world, a butterfly flapped its wings. The sunrise came and went, and Izuku didn't go back home. He picked up some little tricks in his month of wandering. He wasn't proud, but he figured the 20,000 yen he snatched from the guy wearing a Rolex and shoes that looked like they could buy about 6 months of groceries for him, and Mom wouldn't miss them too much. He got himself a couple of cheap changes of clothes and a practical drawstring backpack. Some bare necessities easy enough to carry around, a refillable bottle of water. A hat to conceal his permanent mess of curls. Fake glasses. Just enough to tweak his appearance a bit. After all, Mom probably ran to the police the moment she realized he wasn't home. He felt guilt squirming in his stomach. He could not imagine how agonizing it must be for her. But it'd be better for her in the long run. Izuku was sure of it. She'd move on, and maybe find herself a nice man, without being saddled with the responsibility of caring for Izuku that tied her down to her long-absent husband. She could build a much better life for herself. All she had to do was to bear the first painful days, and then she'd be free. He spent most of the morning sewing a little hidden pouch in his new hoodie. It was a bit lopsided, but it'd do the trick, and he put the rest of the money there. He was going to need it. The next step was easy. Public libraries weren't as busy as they used to be, but they still existed. It was easy enough to convince the clerk that he just accidentally forgot his student ID. Couldn't she just let him in? He was in a real hurry with his homework, and going back home to grab the ID would take forever. Vaguely satisfied with himself, he sat down at the first computer he could find in a secluded enough corner, opened the brand new notebook and the set of pen and pencils he bought that morning, and got to work. Stain worked in a predictable pattern. He'd lay low for long stretches of time, but always appeared in zones with high density of hero work. He'd single out a specific target, patiently waiting for the right moment to strike, and did so rapidly and efficiently, before completely slipping under the radar once more. Rinse and repeat. His modus operandi rarely varied. He'd always surprise isolated victims in secluded, hidden alleys, went in for a quick hit that won him the upper hand, and do his deed. He didn't linger around, didn't leave traces, and the very few still alive witnesses reported that he rarely engaged in excessive goading, clearly focused on his objective. It was unclear which kind of quirk he could possibly have. Izuku was ready to bet it must be some kind of incapacitating quirk. Signs of an active fight were rarely found on the crime scenes, which clued him in. If Stain could somehow paralyze his victims, it'd be much easier for him to do his job quickly and efficiently. There was something almost fascinating in the way he worked. Part of Izuku protested at that thought. The man was a monster that took dozens if not hundreds of lives already. Izuku was being stupid. He should stop this right away. He stifled that small, frail voice and kept going. If he could show Stain that he had been wrong in underestimating Izuku, then maybe the man would be more prone to answering his questions and listening to him. There was nothing bad in that, right? He was doing something useful, at least. He was trying to help. Beat just walking around like an idiot, or go back home to go speak with some shrink. Or go back to school. Izuku sat and worked until pretty much closing hour. By the time the same clerk he convinced to let him in gently asked him to wrap things up, he had almost filled half of his new notebook already. He obeyed quietly, not before fully clearing the traces of his web searches. He had all the info he needed. Once outside, he fished some coins out his secret pouch, got the cheapest and most filling thing he could find at the konbini, and hit the road, munching on his dinner. His work came to fruition the night to follow. His mapping turned out to be on point, and when Izuku woke up around midnight from his park bench nap, it didn't take him long to individuate the possible next victim and follow. Stain's face as Izuku emerged from the darkness, a hood over his head to conceal his features from the terrified-looking young pro-hero currently stuck on the floor, was priceless. Stain let out voice low. "How in the hell? Maybe you leave that guy alone." Izuku replied, keeping his voice low. He didn't want anyone to be able to recognize him easily. And then we can talk. Like FNG hell. You've ruined one of my hunts already, brat. Ain't gonna happen a second time. Yamashita Suzuki, hero name, Cloud. Izuku interrupted, monotone. Started working in the Rayon and Daragu agency 2 months ago. This guy's pretty much a student fresh out of school. Do you really think he deserves to die? Stain sighed, long suffering. He intervened 3 days ago in a robbery and let a civilian die. Great job there, huh? Yeah, because the civilian didn't obey his request and ran into danger. Izuku snapped back. Do you think he isn't tortured enough by that? He's just an intern, he's learning. You gotta cut people some slack, man. We are only human. We all make mistakes. Cloud was pretty much in tears at this point, his eyes darting between Izuku and Stain looming above him, clearly confused. Stain hesitated, red eyes lingering down on the pro-hero immobilized at his feet and then turning back to Izuku, calculating. I can give you a bit more motivation to let him go, Izuku continued, breaking the impossibly tense silence. Like, for starters, I can rattle off how I managed to find you so easily. I'm sure the pro-hero with a communicator in his ear would be really happy to relay that info back to his superiors. Stain's eyes widened and he looked back down. He growled when he spotted the little gray object stuck in Cloud's ear. Slowly, he put the katana back in its sheath. Fine, let's have it your way, you insufferable brat. Come here. Izuku sauntered toward them, as Cloud's eyes went even wider. No, what are you doing? He managed to croak. He's dangerous. It's okay. Izuku replied, looking up at Stain from behind his hood. He won't hurt me. Awfully presumptuous of you. Stain replied, almost jokingly. And yet, they both knew it was the truth. He offered his muscly arm down to Izuku, leaning in, and after a moment of hesitation Izuku let him circle his waist, as he hooked his arms around Stain's shoulders. He climbed the wall, one-armed, carrying the weight of Izuku as if he was made of paper. Cloud attempted to shout something after them, but they were already too far for the words to make any sense. When Stain finally put him down, they were far from the alley. There was chilly wind, up there, in the dead of the night, and Izuku forced himself not to shiver. It wouldn't do to show weakness in front of him. Now talk. Stain barked, clearly sore. I can do better. Izuku replied, taking his lithe backpack off his shoulders and rummaging in it to fish out his notebook. He launched it toward Stain, that easily caught it midair. Take a look. With a sigh, Stain obeyed, opening it. His eyes tightened in a squint, at first, but as he kept reading they got wider, a deep frown setting on his features. Izuku waited, patient, as the man skimmed through his notes, before looking back up with a gaze so calculating it almost felt as if Stain was attempting to dismantle Izuku like a third-dimensional puzzle. You wrote this? He said, not quite a question. You compiled this in 2 days. 1. Izuku replied. Today, I mostly spent mapping the city alleys and running probabilities in my head. About where you could possibly pop up. Stain looked at him, mouth slightly open, for long silent seconds. Who the actual are you? Someone that has nothing to lose, I guess. Izuku replied, shrugging. Will you listen to me now? Stain stepped closer, giving the notes back almost carefully. Why go through all this trouble to talk to me? He asked quietly. You? Izuku hesitated on his words. When he spoke again, he did so slowly, as if measuring each one. You didn't seem surprised by my desire for death. Everyone seems to react with horror at the idea, but not you. Maybe it's because you are so NTMT with it, or because you felt these kind of feelings before, but I've never met someone that just took my words at face value and didn't immediately try to convince me what a gift life is. He spat out those words bitterly. But you just understood and accepted them, and that made it easier to acknowledge that it's okay for me to feel this way. And maybe I wanted you to acknowledge me too. Why? Stain replied, voice so low it almost got lost to the wind. I guess I just didn't want to accept to get dismissed by another overwhelmingly strong person as if I'm just a stupid kid that knows no better. Izuku murmured, steel in his voice. All Might already destroyed my dream. And I know he didn't mean anything bad with that, but I still don't want to live that kind of feeling again. Not again. Stain was still holding his notebook in hand almost gently, keeping it just a bit stretched toward Izuku. When Izuku took it back, his bandaged fingers relaxed. I understand how that would hurt you, but All Might was probably right. It would be insanely dangerous to become a hero without a quirk. Stain commented, flat. He was looking out for you. I know that. Izuku snapped, the rage bubbling up his throat like bile in an instant. I know. But do you have any idea how much it hurt the person I've always looked up to, the greatest hero ever, telling me point blank to just put my lifelong dream on the shelves? Izuku felt the tears run down his cheeks, but ignored them as the words came tumbling down his mouth. In that moment I felt like my heart was taken out of my chest and stomped on. I would have much preferred dying trying to be a hero than live a life like this. Is that what you are doing? Stain asked quietly. Are you trying to die a hero by stopping me? Maybe yes. Izuku sniffed angrily, wiping away the tears. What about that? But you know I won't kill you. I guess if I pester you enough, you'd finally snap. Deku. Stain suddenly interrupted, making Izuku recoil. He forgot which name he'd given him. Stop. You are smart clearly, but I'm not an idiot either. Your story doesn't add up. Why show me all this information you've compiled about me, if stopping me is what you wanted? You could have easily gone to the police. Who would have laughed in my face? Izuku finished for him, irritated. I'm just a stupid quirkless kid. You seem to forget that part of the story far too often. Stain groaned, dragging it down his face, before his fingers stopped on his chin. You are a strange kid. What it is that you want? I mean really want. Izuku hesitated, gaping wordlessly before admitting softly. I don't know. I just don't want to go home. There's nothing for me there. So you filled this hole by playing detective, and how long is that going to last, I wonder? Stain replied, still massaging his chin. But you have potential. Izuku blinked at Stain's chest, before looking up. Excuse me? What a waste would it be to let you become a red splatter on the sidewalk? Stain continued, almost contemplating. No, kid, what you need is a new purpose. Your old one is gone? Well, time to get off your butt and find something else. Tried. For months. Izuku hissed, irritated. Nothing feels right. Nothing will ever be the same as becoming a hero. You're still thinking in the box. Stain locked eyes with him, crossing his arms on his chest. You've got to get out of that kind of mindset. You are a rare breed, Deku. You're not made to fit in the nice little slot society prepared for you. No, there's so much more you can do. Izuku blinked, frowning and speechless. What was Stain even hinting at? Come with me, the night is long. Stain added into the silence, stepping away to stand by the edge of the roof, looking down in. The city? Kid like you out there alone? As good as dead. I've got to teach you some things, before you become a human shish kebab. And, before Izuku could even say anything, he added. Don't start asking me why or how or what the f ever. From now on, you shut up and obey my orders, or you're out. Are we clear, brat? Izuku stared up at the single red eye he could see from his position. He wordlessly nodded. Good. Get on my back now, I'll find a place to start. Lesson 1 is how not to move like a goddamn sack of potatoes, so watch closely. Izuku went from asleep to fully awake in 2 seconds flat. He sat on the naked cement floor, looking around. The abandoned, dilapidated basement looked just as dusty as it did the night before. He yawned, rubbing the sleep out of his eyes. He was still curled up in the corner, using his backpack as a makeshift, vaguely uncomfortable pillow. Stain was nowhere to be seen, but, in the place he was sitting when they both went to sleep around 5 in the morning, there were 2 cups of instant noodles, along with a battered gym bag and the tiniest camp stove Izuku had ever seen. Izuku got up on his feet and got closer. One of the cups was empty, but the other wasn't, even if it was unsealed. Peeling away the plastic label revealed a sad-looking broth and noodles. It was cold and slightly gross, but Izuku downed it in 2 minutes flat, famished. He liked the last traces of the broth away from his lips, before padding back to his own bag and fish out his water bottle, emptying it. He had to remember to fill it again at the first chance. Stomach quieted down, Izuku took a better look around. The place looked even more disgusting than it did the night prior, with the golden blades of day light coming in from above, dust swinging in the air, thick webs hanging from the ceilings and in the corners. There was a good amount of trash abandoned on the floor too. Izuku shrugged to himself, kneeling by his bag and emptying it to do a quick inventory. He took a sniff of his clothes. They smelled stale and vaguely sweaty, but it wasn't unbearable, so he guessed he could go on without changing for another day at least. He sat down, back against the wall, and opened his notebook on his knees. His pen hovered on the paper and he hummed, before a small, lopsided smile pulled at his lips, and he started to write down. How not to move like a sack of potatoes. He got lost in the familiarity of it all, this habit of writing, making bullet points, analyzing, draw little diagrams. He wrote down everything Stain told him the night prior, not foregoing any detail. He got so engrossed in his work, he jumped violently when something moved out the corner of his eye. Izuku turned, eyes wide. Stain took the hood off his face, revealing the now familiar messy black hair, his face covered with a pearl-white cold mask. Lesson number 2, he said, rough. Keep your deadman guard up, brat. An elephant could have sneaked up to you, right? Now. Yes. Izuku murmured back, attempting to quiet down his racing heart. Stain huffed and slid the mask off his face, revealing. You don't have a nose. Yes, amazing observational skills. Stain huffed, sarcastic. Sorry. I guess that's not so strange after all. Izuku replied, looking down at his notebook. A guy in my class could just pop his eyeballs out of the sockets and let them dangle off his face. Was gross as hell. A sniff. Not having a nose is not so bad. Stain let out a little rumbly chuckle as he stalked silently toward his gym bag. He kneeled by the empty cups. Glad to see you're not a picky one. He commented, shaking the empty cup of instant noodles. Can't afford to be when you're on the move. Yeah. Izuku replied, blinking. Thanks for the breakfast? Stain hummed as he opened the gym bag's zipper and stuffed something from his pocket in it, before launching him a little look. What are you writing so intently? Oh, what you taught me yesterday. Izuku shrugged. Writing things down always helps me memorizing them. I see. I won't tell you not to, but it's a dangerous habit. Written words can be a double-edged sword. If you were to lose that little notebook of yours, it could be a mess. Stain commented, flat. Write down, memorize, and then burn it. Izuku looked down at the notebook, clutching it almost protectively. It was a small, thin thing, not many pages at all. Izuku almost filled all of it already. With a sigh, he got up. Wait, don't put away that thing yet. Stain picked up his intentions immediately. He got the little camp stove back out from his bag and turned it on. They watched the paper rapidly burn, silent, leaving behind only a little pile of ash. Stain distractedly patted the last little burning pieces to fully stifle the smoke. Looks like you are a wanted brat. Even more than me. He suddenly said, wiping the ash away from his fingers. What? Izuku replied, confused. Got asked a couple of times by police officers if I saw a boy as tall as you, with messy, curly green hair like yours. Green eyes. Like yours. Stain shrugged. I guess when you get a suicidal teenager disappearing in thin air, people are going to get worried. Oh. Izuku exhaled, frowning. Guess. Pack your stuff, we've got to move. Stain continued. We can't stay here anymore, obviously. Unless you changed your mind and want to go back home. Izuku took a second, before murmuring. No. I don't want to go home. Stain hummed, closing his gym bag and hauling it on his shoulder. He slipped the cold mask back on. Get ready. We've got a long way ahead. Kaizome leaned against the wall, arms crossed on his chest, and observed. The kid was putting on a different kind of shoes, some cheap-looking running shoes, pocketing his bright red ones back in the backpack, along with everything else. He had to admit that, for a brat, he was pretty smart. For what he could see of his few possessions, the kid made sure to bring with him only what was necessary for a life in the streets. But then again, it was not surprising. This boy was far smarter than what his plain-looking exterior let on. He was only barely 15 years old, if the officers that stopped him this morning said the truth. A boy so young, and yet with so much pain and darkness in his eyes, already no wonder he chose the chance to run when it was given to him. Clearly his life mustn't have been great. A quirkless kid probably got bullied to hell and back. Maybe his parents were divorced? He only mentioned his mother, and who knows which kind of person she was. Wouldn't be surprising if the boy came from an abusive household. In any case, it wasn't any of Kaizom's business. The only reason he took the boy with him was because of the exceptional observational skills he shown. What he saw in the now thankfully burned notebook, this kid got a real knack for observing people and dismantling them piece by piece. That, and the fact that the brat could prove to be a real problem, if his stubbornness was anything to come by. It costed Kaizom pretty much nothing to keep an eye on the boy and assess him for a bit, and his quicksilver mind could prove to be useful in the meantime. If anything took a turn for the bad, he could always kill him. He didn't like the idea much, but if necessary, he'd do it. After all, the kid still had that dark light in his eyes. He probably won't mind to get killed too much. "I'm ready," the kid said, carting a hand through his messy hair to push it backward, before putting on an anonymous-looking dark blue baseball cap. It did a decent job in hiding his hair. He took out a pair of glasses from the pocket of his hoodie, too, sliding them on. "You've got bad eyesight?" Kaizom asked flat. "Glasses could be annoying." "No. They are fake. Just to tweak my appearance a bit," he replied, shrugging. "I see. Good choice," Kaizom admitted, eyeing him. It was a small touch, but it definitely helped hiding him in plain sight. "When we are out there during the day, my name is Daiki Ueda, and you are my little brother, Hideki Ueda. Got it?" The boy nodded, silent and expressionless. His eyes were as dark as usual, bags under them. Kaizom nodded back and turned, starting to climb back up and out the abandoned building, the kid following closely. They walked in silence for a long while, taking small roads away from majorly trafficked areas, the only noises around them the birds chirping, the distant cars going by, people just chatting as they went by their daily life, ignoring the two unassuming figures walking side by side. "Saint Daiki," the boy suddenly said, rapidly correcting himself. "Just a minute." Kaizom stopped and turned, adjusting the hood over his head and the mask on his face. They were alone, walking by a riverbank. The boy took his backpack off his shoulders and rummaged in it. He took out his bright red shoes, and with a determined throw, he launched them in the river. They went down with a soft splash, the bright red rapidly disappearing, dragged away by the currents. The boy wasn't done. He fished out a small set of keys. He seemed to observe them for a few seconds, a bright all-might keychain dangling from them, before he also threw those in the water. "Now I'm dead," he muttered to himself before putting the backpack back on. He walked up to Kaizom once more, dull green eyes looking up at him expectantly. Kaizom said nothing. He just nodded. And they started to walk again, silent. Chapter 2. Bohemian Rhapsody. Inko took a series of deep, regular breaths, before pushing herself out of bed. Her entire body felt heavy, and her eyes sore, after she cried herself to sleep. She wobbled to the bathroom, feeling like she was carrying boxes full of bricks on her shoulders. She splashed her face with cold water, and when she caught a glimpse of her reflection in the mirror above the sink, she almost did not recognize herself. She was pale, eyes red like she just stopped sobbing, hair a nest above her head. She distractedly attempted to put a bit of order to it by carding her fingers through the messy strands, trying to ignore the sensation of having her heart suddenly turned into steel. She needed to keep calm and collected. They had a plan. They were going to face this. She needed to keep calm, for Izuku. She already failed him so much, so gravely she ignored all the little signs that something wasn't quite right, and let Izuku slowly slide away, like sand between her fingers. She had a giant red flag flapping right in front of her face all the time, and elected to ignore it. She chose to believe Izuku would never attempt to kill himself, Because the possibility was just too painful, she chose to trust him, even if his eyes seemed so dull, as he promised he would never do something like that. And now she was paying the consequences. Gulping down the knot of tears in her throat, she silently walked down the corridor and stopped in front of the door of Izuku's room. The All Might sign with his name, scribbled in childish, unsure calligraphy, seemed to almost mock her. She knocked softly, waiting for a few seconds. "Izuku baby, time to get up," she called gently, her voice breaking a bit by the end. She took a little gulp of breath in. "Honey, I'm coming in, okay?" She softly opened the door. It took her a moment for her eyes to adjust to the darkness, and she blindly approached the window, opening the shutters to let the light in. When she turned to the bed, her heart fell on the floor. It was empty, covers thrown carelessly on a side. "Izuku!" She immediately called, loud and panicked. She ran out, peering into the kitchen and living room, finding no one. "Izuku!" His shoes were missing from the shoe rack. His keys weren't in the bowl propped on it. Short, panicked breath rose in her chest as she ran back in his room. His phone was abandoned on the nightstand, and his backpack and wallet were sitting by the desk. "Oh, no, 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 no," she hummed to herself, tears prickling at the corner of her eyes. "Oh God, please no." She ran in her room, threw on hastily the first clothes she found at hand, and ran out, phone in hand. "Izuku!" she yelled as she ran down the street, toward the park nearby. She ignored the perplexed looks of the people around her, calling him over and over. With trembly fingers, she dialed the emergency number on her phone. "Yes, hi, my name is Inko Midoriya no my son, he's gone," she sobbed, answering the dispatcher. "He was with me yesterday evening, but I don't know when he left. No, you don't understand, he's only 15. No, listen. He tried to kill himself, once. Yes. Yes, the last time I saw him he was in bed, around midnight he left his phone and wallet at home. Yes, there's one close by, I can go to the station right away. I'll be there in a few minutes." She ran like she had never done before, ignoring the pain flaring in her limbs and chest, as she took short, painful breaths. She didn't care that she was a mess as she entered the police station, explaining in a wheezing panic what happened to the perplexed-looking agents. They immediately guided her in the back and gave a form to fill, and one of the agents took notes as she described how Izuku looked. "He's about 165 centimeters tall, curly green hair, always a bit messy, hard to tame. You see green eyes and freckles, he's pretty thin, soft features. Here's a picture of him." Time went by in a blur as she unloaded any info she could on the agents. Their promptness was reassuring, if even just barely, and by the time she was done telling anything she could, the agents promised they already launched an alarm along the entire city and various officers were already out there, scouting the streets. "We will find him," the officer that first welcomed her in murmured, reassuring. "In the meantime, if you remember any detail, or place you think your son might have gone to, this is my number, call me for anything," he added, pushing a small card in her hand. "If you can, speak with your family and friends, see if they can join the search. Even one more person out there could make a difference." "I don't have family, it's just me and Izuku," she sobbed, nervously drying the tears away from her eyes. But I guess I can go speak with some friends." "You do that, don't hesitate to call us if for anything," the officer insisted, walking her to the exit. "I'm sure we will find him. Boys at this age can be difficult. But I'm sure he will come back soon." She spent the rest of the day knocking at each door in the neighbor, showing them a picture of Izuku, pleading with them to call the police if they caught even just a glimpse of him before she even realized the sun was already setting on the horizon, painting the sky with orange hues. She was nauseous and exhausted, and just wanted to melt on the floor and cry. But she kept going, desperately stopping any passerby, begging them to please keep an eye out for Izuku. She went far enough to walk in her old district, where the Bakugas still lived. She already called the school to inform them of Izuku's disappearance, and they promised they would gather info as well, but maybe speaking directly with Katsuki and his parents might help more. She rung the bell, nervously shifting her weight from foot to foot. "Oh!" Mitsuki Bakugu exclaimed, surprised, when she opened the door. "Inko! What a surprise, are you okay?" Inko forced herself to gulp down the tears. "It's Izuku," she forced herself to let out, trembling. He disappeared either this morning or during the night the police is searching for him, but do you think I can maybe speak with Katsuki? Of course, Mitsuki replied, concerned, a frown emerging on her face. She put a kind hand on Inko's shoulder as she guided her inside gently, closing the door with a soft click. I'm so sorry to hear that. Is there any way we can help? Just keep your eyes open. If you see him, call the police immediately, Inko exhaled, letting herself get guided. Mitsuki gently walked her in their living room, sat her down on the couch. I'll go get Katsuki, I'll be right back. She murmured, gentle. Inko distracted herself by looking around as she instinctively closed her own arms around herself, but seeing the pictures of Mitsuki and her husband, along with a much younger Katsuki, only helped in making her feel even more nauseous and anxious. She heard muffled voices from upstairs, and then silence. A minute later, Mitsuki padded back in the living room, followed by a contrite-looking Katsuki, his hands in his pockets. He silently sat down in the armchair in front of her, avoiding her eyes. Oh my, Katsuki, I haven't seen you in so long, Inko commented with a watery voice, a small frail smile on her lips for a second. You've grown so much. The boy squirmed in his seat, red eyes still avoiding hers. Inko said that Izuku disappeared earlier today. Mitsuki intervened, voice low. Do you know something that can possibly help find him? No. Katsuki replied, flat. They told us during the afternoon lesson. But no one knew anything. He's been missing from school for a month. Inko deflated, releasing a little trembly sigh. Please, dear, try to think if there's anything at all, she then said, eyes filling with tears. Izuku, he's been very troubled lately. I didn't even knew he was skipping school. You didn't? Katsuki replied, frowning, surprised. I thought he was getting looked at by shrinks after he failed that swan dive. Katsuki, Mitsuki hissed, lightly slapping the back of her son's head. Do you think that was appropriate? Inko ignored the painful pang in her heart. Surely Katsuki didn't mean to be so blunt. He was just a kid. Kids didn't always have the best tact. It's okay. She forced herself to say, trembly. Can you remember if he told you anything? Haven't you spoke with him at all in the past month? Katsuki squirmed in his seat again. We haven't really talked for ages. He replied with a stiff shrug. But I thought you were friends? Inko whispered, dejected. Not really. Katsuki mumbled. We haven't been friends for a long time. Oh, she dragged both hands on her face, letting out a little broken sigh. Do you know of anyone that might have spoke with him recently? Some other friend? Not really. Katsuki said again, he doesn't have friends. Inko blinked, sight watery. Was Izuku alone, completely alone, all this time? Go back to your room. Mitsuki murmured, flat. If you think of anything that can help, tell us. But go now. Katsuki obeyed without a word, shooting up from his seat like a spring. Mitsuki waited for the steps to disappear up the stairs, before she sat down by Inko's side and put a gentle arm around her shoulders. I'm so sorry. She whispered, weakly, and that was the last push Inko needed. She let out a broken sob, folding in herself. She let herself get guided against Mitsuki's shoulder, and her wails got muffled against the soft cloth of her shirt as she cried and cried, Mitsuki gently carding her hand through Inko's hair. You're in so much trouble. That was the first thing that Mom hissed once he entered the room, cluing him into the fact she was definitely still set off. Keeping his face low, Katsuki sat down at the kitchen table, as she slammed a cup of rice down in front of him with enough strength it was surprising the bowl didn't break. Dad looked up from his paper, blinking confusedly between Katsuki and his wife. What happened? Where do I even start? She continued, glacial. Oh, I don't know. The fact that your son acted extremely rudely in front of a woman whose son disappeared by referring to his suicide attempt as a swan dive? Or maybe the fact Izuku hasn't been coming to school for a month and he didn't say anything, or, I don't know, the fact that his childhood friend tried to kill himself, and he didn't give a flying F dash. No, shut up, she immediately interrupted. Don't give me any crap. I don't care if you and Izuku weren't friends anymore. People drift away, growing up, I understand that, but did you care for him so little you didn't even try to contact him after he tried to take his own life? When Katsuki dared to take a peek, he met two sets of eyes filled with the same kind of painful contempt. We might not have been the best parents all the time, but I thought we taught you better than this, Katsuki. Mom continued in a painful, raw whisper. That boy tried to commit suicide and you did nothing. He looked back down, biting his lower lip. Words tried to climb up his throat, but he gulped them down. Now eat your dimmen dinner and then go back to your room. Me and your father have a lot to speak about. The rest of the dinner passed in a silence so tense you could taste it on your tongue. Katsuki never looked up again, finished his meal even if his stomach felt like a knot, and rapidly excused himself from the table. He could hear Mom and Dad's voices in a low hiss as he climbed up the stairs, but ignored them, getting back in his room. Ha launched himself face down on his bed, and muffled a frustrated roar against his pillow. As usual, stupid Deku managed to mess things up for everyone. First he pulled the drama queen act by trying to jump from the roof and then skipping school for forever, and now he had to go and disappear on everyone. The teachers sounded stern, today, as they explained that Deku went missing and invited anyone with any possible useful information to come forward. No one said anything, but a heated discussion soon erupted during the break, away from any teacher's ears. Maybe we should tell. Tell what exactly? Oh, I don't know, the fact that all you guys acted like absolute Jarkas to him? Us? What about you? I didn't see being all buddy-buddy with him. Well, at least I left him be. As if that's any better. The whole thing soon devolved into a full-blown fight, with the entire class breaking into little groups. Katsuki didn't intervene the entire time, rage bubbling in his stomach as he walked away. Gee, did you think he actually went through with it this time? One of his usual lackeys wondered out loud as they followed. I don't give a f what he does. Katsuki snarled, irritated. Whoa, dude, Chill was just wondering. Maybe we should say something though. Another intervened quietly. And what exactly? Katsuki scoffed. What are we supposed to say? That he was a whiny, annoying weakling that couldn't keep his sheet together? You told him to jump off the R. Shut up. He roared, immediately stifling any protest. It was his DMN choice to try off himself. It was his DMN choice to stop coming to school, and now it's his DMN choice if he decided to run away. It has nothing to do with any of us. No other protest came after that. But for how long the silence will be kept? At some point, someone would probably step forward and tell everyone. What would they tell? It isn't your fault if stupid Deku was so dumb to really try jump off a roof you didn't push him off that roof. He did it all on his own. You have nothing to do with this. Yeah, it had nothing to do with him. Even if Mom and Dad thought the opposite. He and Deku weren't friends. Why was Katsuki supposed to give a f about him? He was just a useless, quirkless guy. What if I did? Deku replied, voice low, so low, peering at Katsuki from under his mess of hair. He looked pale, dark circles around his eyes, and the green of his irises seemed muted, muddy, much different from the bright emerald that Katsuki knew, that would shine whenever they'd play heroes and villains. A stranger, standing in front of him, thin and frail, eyes a desert. What if I did? No, this has nothing to do with Katsuki. It was on Deku. It was all on. The days turned into a single, infinite stretch of time. She couldn't sleep properly, only take short naps, her mind feeding her nightmares and shaking her awake with a scream dying in her throat every single time. Izuku, broken and bloody on the asphalt, eyes empty, blood running from his lips. Before she could even make sense of anything, a week passed. A week since her baby boy disappeared, alone, with only the clothes on his back to protect him. A week out in the streets, carrying heavy loads of flyers she ordered, Izuku's picture on it, and a plea to call the police if you caught sight of him. A week scouting streets and calling after him desperately. A week of phone calls to the police with tips that lead them nowhere, and presumed sighting of Izuku that turned out to be dead ends. A week of agony as she discovered more and more of the secret life her son led, without ever uttering a single word to her. Speaking with embarrassed and nervous teachers admitting they could barely remember him. finding out that Izuku really had no friends, that even his classmates didn't seem to know him at all. A full week before some of said classmates cracked under the pressure, admitting that there might have been a bit of teasing that went overboard, sometimes, in the class. But was it really just teasing? To push Izuku so far to make him stop attending school without saying anything. What really happened to him? Could Inko even claim to know her own son at this point? A week of tears that never seemed to stop, a week of self-blaming as she accused herself. She should have seen more, she should have done more, she should have realized that Izuku was suffering so much. But she didn't. And now Izuku was gone. She stepped into the police station. A second home, for her at this point. Without a word, the agent guided her in the back, helped her sit down, left her there while she went to call her superior. Inko waited, anxiously. Officer, it is said that they might have found a possible lead, but that he couldn't say more on the phone. She was jittery, almost shivering in her seat, fingers tight on her forearm as she stared at the door. After what felt like ages, Ida walked through the door with a box in his arms, face pointed at the floor. She could barely keep herself in her seat, as the man carefully put down the box. "We found these. We need you to tell us if you recognize these items," he murmured, slowly, opening the lid. He put a hand inside, and took out a transparent plastic bag. Inko let out a sob, covering her mouth. "Those are his shoes," she managed to sob out, eyes filling with tears, one trembly hand stretched forward as if she wanted to take them. They looked a bit worse for wear, and wet, but she couldn't mistake them for anything else. "What? We also recovered this," Itu continued, carefully flat, fishing a much smaller bag from the box. A small set of key, with an All Might keychain attached to them. "His keys, yes, those are his keys," Inko let out an undefinable noise, halfway between a broken laugh and a sob. Do you think this means you are closer to find him? Where have you found those?" Itu didn't immediately answer. He carefully put the plastic bags back in the box, closed the lid. When he met Inko's eyes, there was a thin sheen of tears on his dark ones. "I'm so sorry," he murmured, genuine suffering in his voice. "I am truly sorry, Miss Midoriya. What we are currently searching for, at this point in the investigation, it's a body," he added, barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry." Inko blinked, speechless. The words didn't really sink in, as if her mind refused to accept them. The tears in Officer Ida's eyes finally spilled over, rolling down his cheek as he never looked away from her. "A body?" she whispered, her voice hitching in the knot filling her throat. "What?" Ida didn't say anything as her eyes filled with tears that soon fell down, as she started to shiver violently. No, there must be a mistake," Inko managed to sob, broken and desperate. "No, Izuku is still alive. I know he is. He wouldn't he?" Ida took a small step forward. And then another one. He kneeled in front of her, still in tears, and put two gentle hands on her shoulders. Finally, the finality of the truth pierced in her like a spear. Inko was sure her chest must be breaking in two. There was no other explanation for the pain. She felt it was breaking, and she was going to die, accompanied only by the sound she could hear in the distance. It took her a moment to realize the sound she was hearing was the sound of her own agonized screaming. Mitsuki was just about to turn away with a sigh, a silent Katsuki by her side, when a black car gently came to a stop in front of the house. She watched as Inko got off the passenger side, her face low, arms around her own chest. She didn't even seem to notice them, unsure on her feet, as a man hurried out of the driver's side and around the car to help her, an arm around her shoulder. He blinked at them. "I'm afraid this is not the right moment," he said, clinical. "If you have something to say to Mississippi Midoriya, maybe another time." "No," Inko murmured, her voice like gravel. "No, I want to hear it. I want to know why you are here." She turned her face up, her red and wet eyes looking like there was a black fire burning in them. Her cheeks were splotchy and she was pale, hair messily framing her plump face. She looked like she aged about 20 years in a single night. Mitsuki gulped nervously. She knew what was about to happen would inevitably destroy whatever chance she had to keep her pleasant relationship with Inko going. But that wasn't important. The truth was much more so. "Katsuki," she said, impassive. Tell Inko what you told me. Katsuki shifted his weight from foot to foot, face pointed down. I've been acting really badly toward Izuku. Katsuki finally muttered, voice low. I've been teasing him a lot. I think he hated me. And? Mitsuki pushed in the silence, forcing herself to stand still and not run away in shame as she wanted to do. I'm sorry. Katsuki continued in the same tone. I should have realized sooner I was being terrible. I should have stopped. I want to help search him if I can. Mitsuki kept her eyes pointed forward as she pushed Katsuki's head down in a bow. Inko's face was an unreadable mask. When she spoke, her voice was so glacial it could probably freeze hell over. I knew that already, she said, eyes pointed at Katsuki. I've realized that when I heard Izuku's classmates speak about teasing him and jokes, I'm not stupid, I know what that means. I know what you and all your classmates must have been doing to my son all this time. Katsuki flinched violently, without looking up from his bow. I don't need your help. She spat. I don't need anyone's help. I don't need the help of people that cared so little for a boy, barely more than a child, that she gaped wordlessly, angry tears rising to her eyes, rolling down her cheeks. I don't need any of you. Keep your apologies, I don't want them. I'm going out there, and I'm going to find my goddamn son, because I know he's still alive. And I will find him. Now, get the F out of my sight, I've got to get ready to do what any of you couldn't and save my son. And with that, she angrily strode away, opening and closing the door of her home with a violent slam. Inko has always lived a rather unassuming, peaceful life. She grew up an only child with a stay-at-home mom and a office worker father. She got married at 22, and at 23 lost both her parents. Hisashi's family wasn't very present, either, and for the longest time it was just the two of them. Their marriage was as calm and unassuming as most of Inko's life had been, and when she ended up pregnant, the both of them seemed overjoyed at the idea of having a little one of their own. But Hisashi left not long after Izuku's birth. Her only memory of her husband with their son, a single picture of him holding the small bundle, baby Izuku sleeping peacefully in his arms. They barely ever spoke anymore. He always sent them money, every month, without exception. Not big riches, but enough for her and Izuku to go by and live a fairly comfortable life. She suspected he might have run, intimidated at the prospect of having to raise a child he might have been not ready for. Or maybe he really had to spend some time abroad for his work, and ended up finding himself another family there. Inko stopped holding on hope after Izuku's 4th birthday, when he didn't ask why Dad wasn't home to celebrate with them for the first time. It was okay. She had Izuku, after all. Most of her life had been peaceful and comfortable. All she knew was the calmness of her day-to-day life in a big city, surrounded by all sorts of commodities. But, by God, she was going to uproot her entire life, if it meant finding Izuku now. She was going to leave behind everything, if it meant having even the smaller chance of hugging her son one last time. She was going out there and she was going to find him. It was the only possibility she had. Accepting defeat, accepting he might be dead was not an option. Izuku was alive. She knew it. She could feel it. She was going to find him and she was going to bring him back home, and she was going to protect him, this time. She wouldn't let anything bad happen to him again. Stony, heavy silences seemed to have become an active part of his life in this past week. But this one was different. Mom's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Katsuki didn't dare move a single finger, let alone turn to look at her. He had no other choice but to give in the end. The entire week, he spent torn between the denial, the attempts to push back against the guilt he felt rising a bit more every day in him, like a tidal wave, and the voices from inside him, urging him to face reality. To admit that maybe he may have not physically pushed Deku off that deadman roof, but he might as well have. That maybe he played a part in all this, a big part, probably more than anyone else in class did. That Deku was gone, probably after attempting, and this time succeeding in killing himself. Because he was alone, and scared, and when he was already down they all kept kicking. He could only give up and admit to Mom, gulping down angry tears, what he really had done all this time. He had no other choice but to obey his furious mother as she ordered him out of the house, right now, so they could go speak with Inko Midoriya and he could apologize, beg for her forgiveness. The drive back home seemed to last an eternity. When the car softly braked to a stop in front of their house, Mom didn't move. Katsuki didn't, either. He felt locked in place, like if he only dared to breathe a little too loudly, Mom might as well bite his entire head off. He jumped when she suddenly hit the steering wheel with a furious fist. "How could you do something like that?" She screamed, tears in her voice. Forcing himself, feeling as if all his muscles suddenly turned into iron, Katsuki turned to look at her. Big tears were streaming down her cheeks, face contorted in an anguished expression. "Have we failed this badly?" She sobbed, desperate. "Have we let you down so much that you felt the need to mistreat someone? No, not just someone. The kid you grew up with. Do you really have so much anger in you that you felt the need to pour it on Izuku until he couldn't just take it anymore? Until the only way out he saw was death?" Katsuki gaped, wordlessly, unable to defend himself. Unable to form an answer. He didn't have any answer. He didn't. "Do you have any idea how I'd feel if you were gone?" "That's what Inko is feeling now. Her son is gone. Because of you." She stifled another sob, pushing a hand on her mouth. "He's gone." She sobbed pitifully, leaning down until her forehead went to rest against the steering wheel. Katsuki kept silent, staring at nothing in front of him. The words, slowly, so slowly sinking in his chest. Was Deku really gone? He was. Something prickled in his eyes and nose. He gaped, wordlessly, the only sound around him his mother's soft crying. Ages seemed to go by as his mind filled with white noise, and his eyes kept burning. When Mom spoke again, she sounded exhausted. "Broken. I refuse to let you keep going like this," she murmured. "You wish to become a hero, and yet, right now, you couldn't be further from one." Katsuki flinched violently, but didn't protest, hands tightening in a fist on his pants. "We are going to tackle this, and you are going to make amends for what you've done," she continued, slowly gaining a steadier voice. "You better clean up your FING act from now on, Katsuki, because if you won't start showing me genuine remorse and willingness to become a better person, you can kiss Yue goodbye. Am I clear?" "Yes." "We'll see," she replied, contempt in her voice. "We'll see." 3 days later, a small memorial was held at school. What suspiciously looked like a full-blown altar was set in the gym. Katsuki managed to barely take a look at the picture propped on it, at the smile he hadn't seen in months on Deku's face, until he just couldn't anymore, nausea setting in his stomach. There were heartfelt speeches and shared memories. The words flew right above his head, as he kept gliding about like a ghost, deeply sunk in that weird, fog-like sensation of detachment he's been in for the last few days. It didn't matter either way. They were all fake. No one had a real memory of who Deku was in this place. Speeches meant nothing, since Deku was already dead. He kept his head low and trudged through it, his mother a constant, stony presence by his side. He saw glimpses of his classmates, but all of them had the same kind of expression, exactly the same expression Katsuki must be wearing. They all sort of wandered around, escaping each other's eyes, carefully avoiding to exchange any word. In the end, what they were all left with was a makeshift altar, a picture of a person that was already long dead before his heart even stopped beating, and flowers stinking up the place. There was no one to offer condolences to, because Inko Midoriya didn't show up for even a minute, leaving them with their awkward memories and the pain of a guilt they all, to a certain degree, shared. Chapter 3. Another brick in the wall. He cleaned the blood from his mouth. "This guy's a riot." One of them laughed, loudly, speech vaguely slurred. "Told you. He's always here, trying to preach or whatever the F it's that he's doing." Another answered, looking down at him with a drunken grin. "Hey, dude, ain't you got a job, or something? Do you have so much free time to spend preaching about things no one gives a shit about? If you don't care, then move along," he replied, dignified, rising back up on his feet. "You're not obligated to listen, but I won't stop." They all laughed like he just told the best joke ever, leaning into one another and hitting their thighs with a fist. "Are you even listening to yourself?" One intervened, voice trembling with a stifled laugh. Man, you've got some faulty gears in that head. Do you really think anyone cares about what was it, the purity of heroes? No one cares. Heroes are out there, doing real work, while you're standing here throwing mud at them. If you truly believe that, then you are a fool. He replied low. These so-called heroes do not care. They are only defiling the word. They do it for the money, and the fame. They do it so they can appear on glossy paper and blog posts. They don't really care about what they do. Do you really believe people like that are deserving of being called heroes? They kept laughing and laughing. He closed his hand in a fist, nails sinking in his flesh painfully. He kept his head high, staring at them. Gee, you really believe that sheet? One from the back of the group, the only one that hasn't laughed, intervened. That's uncool, man. My cousin's a hero. I don't appreciate you talking like this about him. If you felt my words, then in your heart you know that your cousin is just another phony. The punch arrived in an instant, but not unexpected. He moved out of the way, this time, grabbing the man's arm and throwing him on the ground, kneeling by his side. The man attempted to struggle, and then went as still as a statue, when he felt the sharp edge of the knife on his neck. If you don't care for my words, move along. He hissed, glaring down at the man. You are not obligated to listen, but neither am I to let you use me as a punching bag. If my words hit a mark in you, then do something to change world, like I'm doing. F off. The guy spat. You crazy motherfucker. With a sigh, he put the knife back in its sheath. The man jumped on his feet, eyeing him warily. This guy's effing crazy, he muttered, taking a step back. Let's go, before he goes insane again. He watched the little group finally move along, muttering between themselves. Kaizomi sighed deeply, shaking his head, and then resumed his speech exactly from the point he left it. Izuku tried to hold it down, but in the end he couldn't. He managed to take some steps away, before finally leaning on his knees and eject the content of his stomach on the grass, painful coughs shaking him. That's one good meal that you just wasted. Stain commented from the stairs, not even turning to look. He was lazily leaning back on the steps, long legs crossed in front of him as he kept his eyes trained on a tablet, reading whatever. I'm aware. Izuku bit back once the spasm subsided, feeling the disgusting, bitter taste of bile on his tongue. He turned and walked toward his bag, fishing out his water bottle and getting a generous sip. He rinsed his mouth before spitting the disgusting water on the ground. He dried a bit of liquid away from his lips with his wrist, and then resumed position, starting back exactly from where he stopped in order to vomit even the tiniest little thing left in his stomach. Izuku had long lost track of time, unable to remember how many days they've spent in that isolated, run-down little house in the middle of absolutely nowhere. Many days, just the two of them, no other human being in sight. Stain sure knew how to choose a safe house. It was dusty but comfortable. They got running water from the little creek nearby and even a bit of electricity, after Stain worked for a couple of days on some old, ruined solar panels, managing to turn them functional under Izuku's curious eyes. When they left the city they walked for a long time at first. Walked away from Yuzurifu until the night fell on them once more. They hitched a ride on a freight train, the chilly air whipping them, and Izuku rolled himself up in his hoodie as much as he could, as his nose stung with the cold. Stain, that ordered him to try sleep a bit, cracked one eye open. Told you to sleep, he muttered. Izuku shrugged, unable to divert his eyes away from the now far lights of the city he could see from the tiny window. What's going on through that busy head of yours? Stain asked with a sigh, opening his other eye and shifting to sit upright. I've never been this far from Yuzurifu before. Izuku replied, flat. Never been this far from home. I just realized how small my world was. It was tiny. Stain chuckled. There's so much more out there, brat. You think hopping on a train is a big thing? Wait and see. I will show you the entirety of Japan, from a point of view most people don't even consider. The pause. Keep your eyes open and learn. Then you could write some essay or something. Isn't that what they have you kids do in school, these days? Izuku let out a surprised little laugh at that. I guess. Stain's eyes were unreadable as he stared. He leaned back down, crossing his arm on his chest and resting his chin down. "Try to sleep, kid," he murmured. "We've got a lot of road to cover. You need as much rest as you can." Izuku obeyed, managing to catch some hours of rest. Stain wasn't lying when he said they were going to cover a lot of road. They silently moved out the train as it came to a stop, unseen, and once they were far enough, standing on a tiny dirt road surrounded by green, Stain whipped out a full-blown paper map, muttering to himself as he observed it for a long couple of minutes, before carefully folding it away. "We're going to walk a lot," he said, before gently poking Izuku's calves with the tip of his boot. "It'll be good training." Again, he didn't lie. It seemed like they would walk for forever, only stopping in the shade for a few minutes to drink and eat a couple of energy bars. Izuku was already fairly tired from the long walk the day prior, but he silently trudged on. He wanted to show Stain he wasn't some delicate little child, that he was ready to take whatever he'd throw at him. But by the time they reached the small little countryside house, as the sun was setting in the horizon, Izuku was so tired he felt like he might just pass out in the dirt. He dragged himself inside, barely capable of lifting his feet from the floor, after Stain forced the door open and hummed to himself as he observed the interiors. The house had been clearly long abandoned. If the dust wasn't enough of a giveaway, the corners where nature was starting to reclaim it and the animal droppings on the floor sure were. "Perfect," Stain commented, letting his gym bag fall on the floor. "Find yourself the cleanest corner you can and rest up. I'm going out." Izuku slurred, unable to finish even that single word as he abandoned his backpack near Stain's bag and collapsed on the floor, eyes half closed. "Setting up some traps." "Hunting," Stain replied, bending down to rummage in his bag. "There are no grocery stores or konbini here. It's either that, or starving to death, brat." Izuku blinked, but before he could even attempt to say anything, Stain added, "I will teach you, but not today. You're barely capable of moving. Stay here, I'll be gone for a few hours. You can eat a can of beans in the meantime." He promptly got out without another word, closing the door that creaked pitifully behind him. Izuku blinked at the run-down wood, tiredness clouding his thoughts. He leaned down on a side. Stain's bag was much bigger than his and, even if there were hard edges digging into Izuku, far more comfortable to use as a makeshift pillow. Izuku deeply inhaled as he closed his eyes, smelling dust and metal, and promptly fell asleep. When he woke, daylight was cutting in through the dirty, crusty windows. Izuku slowly sat, his neck protesting loudly, and confusedly blinked. Did he really sleep the entire night away, just like that? He didn't had a full night of uninterrupted sleep in ages. A faint smell of smoke reached his nose as he climbed back up on his feet. He pushed the door open heavier than he thought and walked behind the house. Stain was bending down by a little spot of naked ground, near a roughly shaped circles of rocks, a fire cracking cheerfully in the middle. There was something cooking on it, and it smelled delicious. "Did you ever had venison before, brat?" Stain asked, not even turning to look at him. "Can't say I have," Izuku replied, slowly stepping by his side and bending down to look at the meat. It looked as delicious as it smelled, and Izuku's mouth watered as his stomach grumbled loudly. "If it gets you sick, try to puke away from the house," Stain replied, stabbing a piece of meat with a knife and offering it to Izuku. Izuku carefully curled his fingers around the handle of the knife, eyeing the meat. He blew on it for a few seconds, not wanting to burn his mouth, before taking a careful bite. He struggled a bit to tear the meat away with his teeth. It tasted vaguely like beef but stronger, somehow. The meat was tougher than beef, too, and he chewed for a long time, before gulping it down. He didn't notice that Stain was staring. He met his eyes for a second before taking another big bite, famished. Stain chuckled to himself, before turning back to face the fire, turning another piece of meat around to cook it better on the other side. "Got a fat one last night?" he commented, moving the embers with another long knife. "It's gonna last us a few days, but we will go hunt again. I noticed there's a stone oven in the back. It's a bit run down, but it shouldn't be too hard to make it functional again. I could make some jerky to bring with us on the road. I hadn't been able to do that in a while." Izuku listened as he rapidly finished his breakfast. He almost wanted to lick the juices away from the metal, once he was done, but the knife looked very sharp. He examined it, curious. It was almost as long as Izuku's forearm, a consistent weight in his hand. The metal, pinked with the juice of the meat, shone under the sun. "Will you teach me how to use a sword too?" he asked, unable to stop himself. Stain turned to him, tilting an eyebrow. "Not with those noodle arms of yours, no," he replied, flat. "And not with a real blade for sure. Unless you want to lose some fingers hard and fast." Izuku frowned, pouting a bit without even realizing. "I don't have noodle arms." Stain grabbed his free hand, raising it above his head and pointedly shaking his arm a bit. It was a stark contrast, the thin line of his arm against Stain's muscular one. "Well, anyone would look like a noodle, next to you," Izuku protested, snatching his hand away. "You're a goddamn wall of muscles." "I wasn't born with those," Stain replied, turning his attention back to the meat. He took the second piece off the fire, examining it for a few seconds, before taking a bite. "Worked my butt off. You do the same, then I'll think about maybe putting a training sword in your hands. For now, we'll focus on other things," he added, pointing at Izuku with the tip of the knife, the meat wobbling on it dangerously. "Like what?" Izuku asked, putting the knife back down by the rocks. "Preparing your body. Basics of self-defense," Stain listed, after gulping down another bite. "'D'you think what I taught you a couple of days ago was all? You've got a shitton of stuff to learn, brat. It's going to be a long, hard road." When Izuku didn't reply, he added, "You knew what you were in for when you accepted to come with me that night." His voice was low, careful. "I gave you a chance to go back on your steps, but you decided to come with me. This is what awaits you. Sweat and blood." "I know," Izuku finally murmured, honest. What? Why are you doing this?" He frowned, looking up to meet red eyes. "I told you not to ask why," Stain replied, sore. Izuku groaned. "Can you blame me for being curious?" "Just because I told you not to ask," Stain replied, flat. He poked Izuku's nose with the tip of the knife, with the blunt side. "It was part of our deal. You don't ask stupid questions, and I won't have a reason to abandon you in the middle of the wilderness to fend for yourself." He nodded toward the house. "Now, go make yourself useful and clean that shithole a bit, while I finish eating. I've already been too lenient with you." Izuku obeyed without protests. He knew when to fight his battles, and this one wasn't one currently worth fighting for. The days passed fast. True to his words once more, Stain spared nothing in pushing Izuku way over his limits. He'd make him run until his feet couldn't carry him anymore. He'd make him do sit-ups until Izuku would roll over and puke. He'd make him lift makeshift weights until he couldn't feel his arms anymore. He pushed and punched and kicked until Izuku learned how to dodge, how to fall properly, how to shield himself even when his entire body felt like it was about to crumble down and his skin was covered in bruises. He forced him to climb trees even when his hands were sore and bloody blisters opened on his palms. He left him up there, so high Izuku would probably break his neck if he fell, and he had no other choice but to find his own way to get back down without becoming a nice red splatter on the ground. From the first lights of day to the last orange hues in the sky, he relentlessly trained, ignoring his sore muscles and painful bruises. The only pauses he had, so to speak, were those days when Stain dragged him in the forest to hunt. The first time it happened, Izuku's eyes turned huge as he watched the man assemble a full-blown, actual bow. "A bow," he commented, flat. "Really? Are you that old-fashioned?" Stain scoffed. "Don't sass me, little brat. This is far more practical than a hunting rifle," he replied. "I can fold it, it's lighter to carry, and most important, quiet. And I can make more arrows on my own. If you run out of bullets, you're kind of F-ed." "Fair enough," Izuku admitted, finding no fault in that logic. "But where did you even learn all this stuff? Is there a serial killer school somewhere?" Stain chuckled, not taking his eyes away from the bow as he adjusted the string. "You'd be amazed to discover the stuff you can learn from the internet," he replied, giving no more explanation. Those days felt almost like a vacation, even though they were anything but. They were a kind of training in itself, as Stain forced him to always mind his steps, learn how to be quiet like a cat, and working his senses to make the most of them. It took a long while before Stain grudgingly agreed in putting the bow in his hands during a hunt, and even more so before Izuku finally managed to land a hit. "A bit unrefined, but I'll take it," Stain commented, as they walked out the bushes to approach the doe that was writhing on the ground, still alive after Izuku's clumsy hit. He unsheathed one of the knives permanently attached to his hips, carefully grabbing the blade and offering the handle to Izuku. "Your game. You finish it off," he said flat. Gulping nervously, Izuku accepted the weapon, kneeling by the doe. He could see the white of her eyes as she kept squirming, unable to get away from them, panicked breaths shaking her ribcage. Izuku hesitated, shifting the blade from hand to hand. "You are just letting it suffer now," Stain said, voice low. "Sorry," Izuku murmured, putting a gentle hand on her neck. "Thank you for the food." The sensation of the blade sinking in the doe's flesh was unpleasant, making goosebumps rise along his skin. Blood gurgled violently from the deep cut in her neck, and in a matter of seconds, the doe's eye turned glassy as she stopped moving. "A lost cause," Stain muttered to himself, almost amused. "I already shown you how to gut and skin game. Finish the job," he added, stifling a bit of nausea in his stomach. Knowing there was no refusing a direct order, Izuku obeyed. How could they not see it? It was right in front of their eyes. But nothing changed. No matter how much and hard he tried, no one seemed to listen. Were words really so weak they could reach no one? He was taught about the power of words, a concept he got hit in the head over and over by teachers and parents alike. Was it just a big lie they were being fed with to keep them calm and compliant? It would make sense. In this society of corrupted ideals and soiled words, it was no wonder they completely lost any power. It was no wonder just words weren't enough anymore. It was no wonder they were all subjected to a constant campaign of lies, just so they could all keep silent and act like little, dutiful ants to keep the gears of society going. Not individuals, but cogs in a giant machine, beaten into it to keep things running. It was no wonder that his plead fell to deaf ears. It was no wonder no one was willing to listen, when they were all blinded by these shiny false idols. Words were not enough. He understood that now. Kaizome broke away from the mass, leaving behind a hole in the wall. One day, he promised himself he was going to turn that little, insignificant hole he left behind into a crack, and then another, until he could make the entire wall crumble. No matter how many times the kid fell, he always managed to get up. He had to admit he was impressed by his stubbornness and force of will. Kaizome observed from his favorite spot, perched on the lopsided steps of the stairs that led up to the second, dilapidated floor of the house, watching as the kid kept his streak of push-ups going, absolutely drenched in sweat, his arms trembling violently, eyes fogged over and far, as if he was just about to pass out. Which could easily happen, wouldn't be the first time since Kaizome put him under his training regimen. This kid had guts. It was hard, trying not to ponder about what could have possibly pushed a child. This stubborn on the brink of suicide. What could have possibly made him actively attempt to jump off a roof? Either he went through an extremely traumatic event, recently, that shook him enough to push him to try kill himself, or something must have been wearing him down, slowly but surely, for months. Years even. Even rock crumbles, under the unassuming and yet relentless strength of water drops, falling and falling. It was hard not to wonder he must have been very lonely, with nothing to hold on to, if the only way out he saw was death. Maybe his dream of becoming a hero was all he had left, until All Might himself ripped that away from his hands. This kid was stubborn and determined. He was absorbing concepts like a sponge, progress showing to the naked eye each day. He was already starting to look less like a little frail noodle, timid muscles appearing under his skin, and the bruises on him diminished each day, as he finally learned how to properly dodge hits. What a waste would it have been, truly, to let this kid die. He had so much potential, but of course you've got to count on this corrupted society of idiots that couldn't look past the superficial shine, to abandon such a promising child in the dark. He could understand why All Might told him he should not become a hero. Of course, All Might would never throw a quirkless child into danger, being the only true hero he was. And it wasn't his fault he didn't have the time to properly get to know the kid, giving an honest answer in the face of the only information he had about him. But the hero world truly lost a treasure that day. Well, Kaizome was willing to pick up the pieces. He honestly expected the brat to give up at some point, but he was still going, showing exceptional aptitude. At this point, he wasn't going to leave him behind as he initially planned to do. He didn't want to see this kid reach an even lower point, risk to have him turn his hopes toward the idiots that called themselves villains and used their powers improperly. Kaizome knew he wasn't a saint. He knew his hands were stained. But he still believed in a better, more just society, and was willing to corrupt his own soul for it. It was leagues above those selfish, egoistic assholes that only used their quirks for personal gain, in his humble opinion. And it wasn't bad, the idea of having a young one follow him dutifully, to have a little chick full of potential absorb the rightful ideals most people were blind to. Maybe, one day, when he couldn't properly hold his blade anymore, his new, little pet project might step in his stead. But that would be a long time coming yet. The kid was soft-hearted and tender, still, no matter how much Kaizome beat him down, no matter how many times he already made him stain his hands with blood, even if it wasn't human. He was stubbornly hanging on his own ideals, and even if they overlapped often, they never quite aligned with Kaizome's own. Okay, look, I really get it, he said one time, during one of their now usual debates, as they sat around the fire in the deep of the night, a sky full of stars above their heads. Like I do. I know what you mean and I agree, in a sense. It kind of essegs the whole system. It feels like it needs to be dismantled and rebuilt from the ground up. A pause as he took a bite, gulping it down. But still I don't think your way is quite the right way to go at it. Because you're young and naive. Kaizome replied easily. Do you think I woke up one day and thought, well, I'm going to start killing people from now on? No, it was a decision I matured with time, after I repeatedly attempted to get through people in a peaceful manner. I'm perfectly aware that my methods are extreme. A sip of water. I know what I do is morally reprehensible, and I know that, if there's a deity above, they've long forsaken my soul to hell. But it's a sacrifice I'm willing to make, in order to rectify a system that's corrupted to the core. The boy didn't reply to that, the reflection of the orange flames dancing in his dark, dull eyes. You don't have to think what I think. Kaizome added, shrugging. I don't want you to be a little obedient soldier, I want you to think with your own head, but trust me, once we'll go back to the city, you will see with your own eyes. And you will understand. I'm sure of it. Maybe. The kid conceded, careful. Maybe I will. But regardless of what I will see, I still think it's not right to take a life. And I don't see myself changing my mind so easily. That's your prerogative. Kaizome huffed, falling backward on the grass and crossing his arms under his head, looking at the white dots shining in the dark. You truly are a strange kid. He added, almost amused. Why do you say that? The first time we've met in that situation, I understood you wouldn't be afraid. You were willing, no, you were wishing for death. But now? You're in the middle of nowhere with a serial killer, debating the morality of murder like you're talking about the weather. A little chuckle. Either you still want to die, or you just don't quite understand who you are speaking with. I don't know if I actively want to die. The boy replied, thoughtful. I always kind of feel like if I suddenly stopped existing, I wouldn't mind too much. I've made peace with that feeling, I think, and of course I understand who am I talking to. A small pause before he added, softly. Maybe I'm crazy. No, I probably am, that's okay. But I don't think you are bad. Kaizome blinked, staring at the stars. I mean, of course there has to be something seriously effed up in you, if you can kill people without batting an eye, but so what? I'm kind of effed in the head too, I think. Pot meat kettle and all that. His voice lowered to a whisper. I don't agree with what you do, but at least you do it for a strong ideal, and you don't steer away from your own set of morals. That's a bit admirable, I think. You're seriously a weird kid. Kaizome could only reply, quietly, after long seconds. Get inside. So, you know what awaits you tomorrow. With a little groan, the kid climbed back up on his feet. He heard the soft steps in the grass and the wooden door creaking pitifully. Good night, the boy said, almost inaudible over the soft rustle of leaves in the wind. The door creaked close. Kaizome lied there, in the grass, watching the stars for a long time. He ran and ran and ran. His mind was fogged over, his breath stung in his chest. He finally couldn't resist anymore and he came to a stop, leaning on a wall as his stomach rebelled him, spewing its content on the asphalt. He did it. He killed someone. Not just someone. A disgusting sham, a poor excuse of a human being. A monster, using his status as a popular hero to molest young women in the club. He's been chasing that rumor for a while. He wanted to see with his own eyes. His training was impeccable. He knew he was ready. All he had to do was to truly reclaim his first blood sacrifice, take that first step toward the next part of his life. And he needed to see if it was true. To finally quell his beating heart and his guilty mind. He went down without even a single word, that disgusting phony eyes wide, as if he couldn't believe that someone would dare raise a weapon against him. He didn't make a sound as blood spilled from his throat and he slid down the floor, soon lifeless. He was the first one. His first kill. First of many. He could tell. He dried bile away from his mouth, looking down at his trembling hand. It was red with blood even if he had been careful, trying not to stain himself too much. But regardless, he was stained now. His hands were, his soul was. There was no coming back. This stain he could never wash away. 2 more days and then we move. Izuku blinked. The distraction was enough to allow Stain to grab him and throw him on the ground. He bounced painfully before coming to a stop, panting. That was such a dirty trick, he glared, as the upside-down Stain in his field of vision flashed him a lopsided grin. Told you your enemies will not care for honor or fairness. If they can get any kind of cheap shot, they will. You have to learn how to stay focused. Yeah, Izuku sighed, climbing back up on his feet and dusting thin blades of grass off his pants. Do you actually mean it? The moving? Yes. Stain replied, turning his face up to the sky. Can't you feel how prickly the air has gotten? It's probably going to start snowing soon. I think it's time we move elsewhere. Izuku shifted back into position without needing to be prompted, and so did Stain, resuming their sparring session. The man had a point. In the past week the air has gotten significantly chiller, and dragging himself outside their little house every morning was starting to get increasingly more difficult. Not that the old, run-down building was warm, but it certainly was a bit warmer than the outside. Will you tell me about your father? Izuku jumped, but this time he avoided the kick coming his way. He squinted, lips pursing in a thin line. Finally. Stain grinned, amused. Took your sweet time. Izuku huffed, attempting and failing a little feint. Stain just slapped his fist away. Do you think bad guys are going to ask me that? He said, tilting an eyebrow. As I said, they'll take any cheap shot they can. They fell into silence only broken by their light huffs, until Stain spoke again. It was a genuine question, though. You never told me anything about your past. Neither did you, so what about that? Izuku replied, frowning. Well, I'm an adult, and you are a brat. In a sense, you are my responsibility now. In a very loose sense. Izuku rapidly quipped back. You don't exactly play by the rules. True. Stain conceded with a chuckle, before shifting on the attack again, relentless. So. Izuku dodged a punch. So what? There's nothing to say. He left to work abroad when I was, 2 weeks old? Never came back. Izuku shrugged. I don't even remember his face, and I don't think I ever heard his voice. Mom never told me anything about him, but I could tell that she missed him. I don't know why he just up and left like that. He rolled away from a kick, rapidly getting back up on his feet. In any case, he's like a stranger. Personally, I don't think I have a father. Better an absent father than a shitty one, in my opinion. Stain commented, dodging just barely a chop directed to his neck. I guess I don't have the life experience to decide if that's true or not. Izuku replied curtly. He didn't have any particular feelings about his father other than a vague, distant bitterness, but speaking about it made him think of Mom. How was she doing? Even if he lost track of the time, he was sure a month must have gone by at the very least. Maybe a month and a half. Maybe even more. Was she still sad? She must be, but Izuku hoped not. He really hoped she moved on, accepted he wasn't coming back, and found herself another way to happiness. Kind of AD move in retrospect, wasn't it? You disappeared on her, just like Dad did. Maybe she should just forget men in general. She clearly has horrible luck with them. Good. He missed her. Stain's knuckles brushed against his cheek as he just barely managed to dodge another hit, losing balance and falling on his side like an idiot. Strangely enough, no reprimand came, and when he turned his face up to meet Stain's eyes, there was something unreadable in the red. It's getting late, Stain commented, turning away. Go change out of those wet clothes, I'll start a fire. Izuku obeyed, silent, unable to decide if he was grateful for the pause or not. On one hand, his everything hurt; on the other, not having anything to do let his mind free to wander. The last set of clothes he washed were still slightly humid, but it definitely beat the ones on his back, currently drenched in sweat. He changed, before collecting both their dirty laundry in a ball in his arms and silently walking out, toward the creek. If Stain noticed him, he said nothing. He carefully washed everything, trying not to think too much. The water was freezing and soon his hands started to sting and burn, but at least it took his mind away from everything, even if only for a moment. And yet, in how long hadn't he thought about Mom? He avoided the idea like an illness, careful even in his own mind. He let himself get lost in his new life, lulled by the peacefulness of nature around them, going to sleep so exhausted every day he simply didn't have any energy left to think. But even just mentioning her, it brought it all back. Like a waterfall suddenly erupting in him, the memories spilled in his mind. It felt strange, almost like watching a movie from afar. But all those things happened to him. All those unpleasant things tightening his chest and roaring in his heart, they happened. Weren't they exactly the reason why he was there, now, after all? Why he was in the middle of nowhere, living on wild animals and hand-washing clothes in freezing water, spending his days getting trained to possibly become a murderer himself? Weren't those things exactly the reason why he left the safety of home in his mother's arms, just to escape toward an uncertain, dark destiny? The reason why he was pushing himself over his limits every single day, even if he couldn't even say why he was doing it? His eyes stung, and he bit down on his lip, stifling the sob he could feel rising in his chest. Still, the tears spilled on his cheeks, and he angrily doubled over on washing the clothes, not even bothering to dry the tear tracks off. Hopefully, the sound of the water running would cover the little hiccups and sobs he couldn't manage to gulp down. 2 days, and then they will leave the first place where Izuku truly felt safe in years. It soon stopped having any effect on him. It became easier holding the blades. It became easier cutting through flesh like butter. It became easier, so much easier, ignoring their pleads for mercy, the terror in their eyes, the noises they made as they died. A little piece of his humanity left with every life he took, but it was okay. He was sacrificing it willingly, fully knowing the consequences. For a just world. The man at the driver's seat smiled down at the kid, a soft little light in his eyes. You guys must have been tired walking in the snow like that. He commented, voice low. Is he your son? Kaizome didn't bother to correct him. He nodded, silent, face mostly hidden behind the heavy scarf that still smelled stale, and a heavy wool hat. The boy was wrapped in a similar fashion, and, if the man wondered why they wore clothes so out of style, he did not comment on it. It snowed a bit earlier than usual, this year. He continued, still speaking in a soft tone as to don't wake the brat. That fell asleep, leaning against Kaizome's arm. I bet it must have surprised you too. Hunting trip. Kaizome replied. Better humor the guy that was giving them a lift in the heavy snowfall that was rapidly covering everything in a thick layer of white. It was his first. I estimated we had still a couple of days more before snow. The man laughed. Happens to the best of us. He commented, cheerful. Me and my Pa used to take trips like these all the time, when I was a little one. We got surprised ourselves a couple of times. Glad I happened to pass by. It's really no fun, getting stuck in the snow. Yeah, it really isn't. Kaizom sighed. They could have kept trudging through the snow, but he wasn't going to turn down a slide of luck. Where do you live? I can take a detour and drive you there. Oh, we're not from around these parts. We were supposed to get picked up by my wife, but of course I called her and told her not to come. Her car is really not equipped to deal with the snow. Kaizom replied, the lie easily rolling off his tongue. If you could leave us by the closest train station, it'd be more than enough. Thank you for your generosity. Well, that's not too far from here if you are sure. The man said, frowning vaguely. I could drive more, it's really no problem. The boy hummed vaguely, shifting to lean even more against Kaizom's shoulder and arm. The man smiled again, soft. The train station will be just fine, thank you. Kaizom replied in even a lower voice, a kind note of finality in it. The man added nothing, just kept driving as the white engulfed the last strokes of green around them. Thankfully, their driver did not linger around or seemed suspicious at all once he dropped them at the station as promised. The boy sleepily thanked him after he slid off the truck, rubbing his eyes. Hope you'll have a safe trip home. He greeted them one last time, closing the door and gently driving away. The brat yawned, a hand in front of his face just barely covering his open mouth. Had a nice nap? Kaizom asked, sarcastic. The best. The boy replied, flashing him a still vaguely sleepy sheet-eating grin. Where are we? At the closest point of contact with humanity around these parts. Kaizom shrugged, putting his bag strap around his shoulders. Let's go check the timetables and see how many trains we'll have to hop on to get somewhere where we won't freeze our buttes to death. Luckily for them, they would only have to change train 3 times, and the first one was just about to arrive. He rapidly bought tickets at the lone little machine in the station. As they sat in the carriage, the boy seemed about to take off his hat, but Kaizom stopped him, fingers closing on his wrist. Keep it on. He murmured, though. Even if we are alone, for now, someone might always recognize you. We may never know. The brat groaned, but obeyed. Can I at least take the scarf off? It smells like it has been sitting in dust for the last 20 years. That's because it probably was. Kaizom replied, amused, giving a little nod. The boy unwrapped the ugly, vaguely eaten away wool scarf from his face, taking a deep breath. Less whining. We have to consider ourselves lucky there was some winter gear left behind in that shithole. I wasn't whining, just stating facts. With a little shrug, he folded the scarf, before pushing it in his backpack. I'm grateful we had something to defend ourselves with, since someone's estimation of the snow was completely off mark. Oh, give me a dimmin' break, I'm not a living weather forecast. Kaizom scoffed, making the boy release a short little laugh. At least I knew it was about to snow. You would have been just oblivious, out there, if you were alone. Touché. The boy replied, a last little grin soon disappearing from his face. Where are we going now? If I want to show you how it really is, out there, there's only one place. Kaizom said, flat, looking out as the scenery zipped by the window. Tokyo. The boy didn't ask any more questions, moving his dull green eyes toward the vaguely opaque window. Outside, the world was a single block of white. Chapter 4. The first tuft of hair did not make a sound, falling on the floor. Izuku watched it, distantly, keeping his head tipped down. He felt a gentle tug and then the undefinable sensation of his hair giving up under the impossibly sharp blade. Stain worked quietly and efficiently. Izuku did not move even when the blade caressed the nape of his neck, and soon enough a circle of hair surrounded the chair he was sitting on, his head feeling increasingly lighter. All done. Stain finally said, and Izuku immediately rose a hand to card his finger through his hair. Well, he didn't card them through as much as on his hair. It was cut so short he couldn't even grasp the little tuft, just feel the prickly sensation of them under his palm. It was strange, he wasn't even sure he ever had hair this short in his entire life. A small, rectangular mirror entered in his field of vision, and Izuku grabbed it, examining his own reflection. The person that looked back at him was different. He was slightly pale, dark smudges under his eyes. The freckles were still the same, but his cheeks were much less round and much more hollow. Dull eyes glanced back at him, until he looked up, observing his new hairstyle, very reminiscent of a proper buzz cut. He groaned. "What now?" Stain sighed, long-suffering, leaning over the sink as he slid the blade over his own cheeks with ease. "Look at the back of my head," Izuku grunted, attempting to glance at the reflection of said back in the mirror. "I look like a Demon Marimo." The blade stopped on Stain's face, his eyes going slightly wide, before he barked a laugh. "Real funny." Izuku grumbled, stepping down the chair, barefoot and cautious to don't step all over the mess of his own hair. He walked over to the old-looking, Western-style tub, leaning on it to rinse away the annoying little hairs that were tickling at him. "Change your appearance as often as you can, and people won't remember you." Stain commented over the noise of the water running. "We can get a dye if it bothers you so much. It's really not important." Izuku replied with a sigh, putting down the shower head and grabbing an already slightly humid towel to dry himself off. "It'll probably grow back super fast. It always does." He moved about, grabbing the old-looking dusty broom he saw in the tiny corridor outside and then got back in, starting to collect his hair in a neat little pile. Izuku wasn't sure how or which strings Stain had to pull, but somehow, they had a real house. Yes, it was minuscule and kind of neglected, and the furniture looked to be about 40 years old. It could use a deep cleaning. The mattresses felt bumpy. But it was a house. With a bathroom and a kitchen. God, Izuku could not wait to cook some rice and maybe even a bit of fish. Meat was good and all, but if he had to eat another piece of venison, he might just decide to starve himself to death. It felt like a miracle to him as they stepped in, after Stain fished out a set of vaguely rusty keys from under a flower pot that hosted nothing but sad dirt, dragging with it 1 or 200 spider webs. But Stain took a long time examining every corner minutely, tested windows and doors, muttering to himself while Izuku claimed the bed in the corner, happily testing the old, bumpy mattress. The examination must have gone well, because Stain finally settled down his bag by the door, before nodding toward the bathroom. "It's starting to grate on my nerves, seeing you with that nest you call hair on your head," he said curtly. "Let's go take care of it." Izuku followed, dutiful, and it took only a handful of minutes for Stain to tame said nest. Izuku kept testing his own hair, reeling in the weird sensation of it, even after he was done collecting the ball of curls in the dustpan. Izuku yawned as he let himself fall down on the naked mattress once more. He was starting to entertain the idea of taking a nap, when Stain finally emerged from the bathroom without the 5:00 shadow that appeared during their long commute to Tokyo by train. "Don't relax too much, brat. We've got only a few hours of light to settle down and go get some basics. We will need some dry and canned food, and then a trip to the hardware store." "The hardware store?" Izuku blinked, confused. "What for?" "This place is decent and well-positioned, got a lot of useful escape routes." Stain commented, almost to himself. "But I will need to take precautions. Bube trap every window. You're very careful." Izuku commented, dragging himself back up in an upright position. "I have to be." Stain replied, flat, as he leaned down by his bag and started taking out knives that he secured on his chest, before throwing on an anonymous-looking gray sweater. "You don't get to make as many enemies as I do and survive by being careless." "Enemies?" Izuku blinked again, frowning. "I mean, I know you've got heroes and the police on your tail, but the worst they could do is arrest you. Which kind of other enemies could you possibly have that you feel the need to bube trap windows?" "Everyone," Stain said, rising back up on his feet and approaching Izuku. "You researched me. You know phony heroes are not the only kind of people my blade has tasted." "I know," Izuku murmured, eyes turning toward the floor. "Villains too. Lots of them." "Then you can understand," Stain said flat. "If there's a war between heroes and villains, I know we are right in the middle of it. The perfect target for some crossfire. You do well to not forget that, kid." Izuku stared at Stain's feet. The man sighed. "Raise your arms." "Huh." Izuku asked as he instinctively obeyed. Stain secured a knife holster firmly around his chest and shoulder, tugging a bit to make sure it was hanging on tight. He took a knife out of one of his own, waving it in front of Izuku's nose. "This is for emergencies only," he said, dead serious. "Don't play with it, don't think it's a toy. If I even catch a glimpse of you being irresponsible with it, I'll take it back, no questions asked. You don't unsheath it unless it's a life-or-death situation. Am I clear?" Gulping, Izuku nodded wordlessly. Stain kept his intense red eyes trained on him a bit longer before sliding the knife in the holster under Izuku's armpit. "Put your hoodie on and be careful about keeping it on," Stain said, sliding the familiar cold mask on his face to hide his nose. "Or lack thereof, we're going out." Walking back in a city was unnerving. Mizudafu was a fairly big city, but it paled compared to Tokyo. For a long time they walked silently along peaceful streets, until they passed some kind of invisible threshold, and suddenly there were people everywhere. Izuku nervously adjusted the baseball cap lower on his head, keeping his eyes down and following Stain's familiar, military green boots that were vaguely peeling at the tips. He probably had no real reason to worry. Who would spare even a single look toward a kid with a baseball hat and an oversized hoodie, when around him walked by people with hooves instead of feet, wings, or whatever other strange thing their quirk allowed them to do? Still, he kept being real careful about not meeting anyone's eyes. Besides, he was too busy trying to contain his rapidly growing discomfort at being abruptly thrown in that cacophony of voices, traffic, and loud ads playing on the big screens above his head. He suddenly really missed their rundown little house in the middle of nowhere and the sounds of the forest. Hell, he could even keep eating venison without a peep, if it meant going back to the peaceful rustle of leaves. He might go insane if they had to spend another 5 minutes in this crowd. By the time they finally entered a shop, Izuku was on the brim of a full-blown panic attack that he was barely holding back. He felt strangely detached and distant as he kept following, dutifully helping Stain pile a stock of food in their shopping basket, hauling it without a lament in his backpack after they were done at the checkout. They didn't exchange a single word as Stain guided him out toward another shop. They came back to the apartment with their haul a full 4 hours later. Izuku mutedly put away their groceries in the pantry as Stain sat in the middle of the floor, organizing all the stuff he got at the hardware store, muttering to himself. Once done with the groceries, Izuku climbed on the still-naked mattress in the corner, rolling up on a side in a tight little ball, his back turned to Stain. He heard Stain's tinkering with all his stuff stop for a few seconds. Then he must have climbed back up on his feet, going by the little huff, noises of cutlery being moved around and a stove getting turned on. Izuku tuned it all out, getting lost in the mindless white noise filling his head, until he heard the noise of something being put down by the mattress. "Drink up and rest while you can," Stain said in a low, flat voice. "We're going out tonight." Izuku stiffly turned on the mattress, took the cup of tea still steaming on the floor by his side and forced himself to drink, before dragging the hood up on his almost naked head and curl up once more, closing his eyes to surrender to a restless, nervous sleep. He felt marginally better when he woke up thanks to a little shove. He rubbed the sleep out of his eyes with the sleeves of his hoodie, painfully uncurling his limbs. "What time is it?" he asked sleepily, stifling a yawn. "Almost 2. Stain replied, voice low. "You better put on another layer, it's chilly out there." Izuku stretched and silently followed Stain's suggestion, putting his other hoodie on top of the one he was already wearing. Hopefully it'd be enough. "We're not doing much tonight," Stain said, waiting in front of the door. "Just taking a walk, assess the situation. I want you to keep your eyes open and observe carefully. Tell me anything you think is relevant." "What do you mean?" Izuku asked as he leaned down to put his battered, mud-stained shoes. "I mean exactly what I said. Observe, take in details, plan carefully. I know you've got a pretty analytical mind in there, so warm it up because from now on you're going to need it." The moment they stepped outside, Izuku's breath condensed in front of his face, the icy night air fully waking him up. Stain silently guided him off in the streets, rubbing his own arms. "We're going to need some heavier clothing for this," he muttered almost unconsciously. Izuku let out the tiniest, relieved sigh. He was glad he didn't have to say that himself. True to his word, they just walked. Izuku felt a bit awkward at first, unsure what Stain exactly asked of him, but at some point it started to click, the words cascading out of his mouth in a low mutter. Shortcut to the apartment, probably pretty dark during the day, too, could be a good place to lose someone chasing not very trafficked, a lot of bikes but not many cars seems to be a rather old neighbor, most inhabitants will probably be over the age of 60. The temple could also be a good hiding place, in a pinch. He kept going and going, not only commenting about the area, but the few people they met, trying to assess their quirk from any visible sign, and their intention from the expression on their faces. His throat felt dry by the time they got back to the apartment, and Stain had an expression Izuku could only define as satisfied. "Good job," he commented, musing his short hair over the hood, the moment the door closed behind them. "I'd say you should lose the muttering unless you are actually speaking with me, but that aside, you did good. Go sleep some more, kid, you've earned it." It never failed to unnerve Izuku, seeing students in their school uniforms as the days started to trickle by. Almost like a sudden whiplash, reminding him that was the life that once belonged to him. Wearing a uniform, going to school every day, studying. But at the same time, maybe that life never really belonged to him. It felt so far now, and watching kids his age laughing and joking between themselves, happily, made his heart sting. That life never really belonged to him. He was always alone, his only company the sound of his own steps as he went and came from school each day. They live in a world different from ours. Stain commented one time, softly, as he must have noticed Izuku staring at a small group of middle school students playing around some swings. "Don't let yourself get swayed. People like us, we are just different from anyone else." He had a point. Izuku has always been different, that's why no one but his mother ever wanted him around. He looked away, and never let himself linger again. They set in a routine. Izuku still kept training, even if they didn't have the same freedom anymore. They had to make sure to go unnoticed, so most of the day he'd have to spend inside, in order to avoid suspicions and people wondering why a kid his age wasn't at school, while Stain went outside to do God only knew what to get some money. He didn't waste any time, even if he was forced inside the apartment most of the day. He took matters in his hands and cleaned it from corner to corner. By the time he was done, the place looked a whole lot different than it did at first. And he found the hole from where the cockroaches kept getting in, so getting that close and placing a bit of poison for good measure should take care of it. He kept doing all the exercises he possibly could in the cramped space of the apartment. Stain even got him real weights to train with, and Izuku was surprised to discover that he could now lift 20 kilograms with a single arm easily. He got a bit excited the first time, confronting his arm. With a perplexed Stain's. It was still much smaller than his, but definitely did not look like a noodle anymore. He did what he could, but for the most part he slept the day away. Their days only really started when the sun would set on the horizon. That's when the real training came back into play. Stain had absolutely no leniency, no matter the fact that they were in the middle of a crowded city. If anything, he expected Izuku to work even harder, forcing him to follow, only counting on his own strength as he moved in the city with the ease and agility of a street cat, unseen and unheard. Izuku rapidly collected broken nails and bloody fingers, and one memorable time when he tumbled down a roof, a chipped front tooth. But he was expected to follow, no matter the reason, and so he did, nursing his numerous little injuries back to health during the day. Except for the tooth. Not much he could do about that. It became a little bit easier every night. And, in a sense, it turned to be liberating. Izuku felt like the city had no secrets for them. They could move in the dark, away from prying eyes, and no physical barrier could hold them back. It was a weird sensation, to know that he didn't have reasons to worry anymore. He could just go anywhere he wanted as long as he kept himself hidden in the shadows. The world was at his disposal. He was starting to even enjoy it, to look forward about getting up from his mattress in the corner as the last light of day died in the sky and few, timid stars started to appear in the polluted dark. To go out and run, jump and climb, feel the almost pleasing burn of his muscles as he worked them, to feel the chilly night air enter his lungs and come out in little puffs in front of his face. But that peace, it didn't last very long. It all turned one night like any other. They were surveying the streets as they usually did, silent, only ever talking in hushed tones when it was really necessary. They heard a scream in the distance and exchanged a single look before dashing. The scene from above felt almost movie-like, but the terror in the woman's voice was real. As they arrived, they could see a hero brawling with a duo of villains in the street below, empty of any other person. "Oh, that's the Demolisher," Izuku muttered, voice low. "Can transform any limb in a wrecking ball complete with chain." His heart shot up in his throat when the Demolisher did exactly that. Let one of his arms shift to hit one of the villains, the swinging ball of iron zipped above the woman's head, that managed just in time to duck. "Is he insane?" Izuku hissed, incredulous. He could have smashed her head like a mature tomato. Stain leaned down on a single knee by his side, voice glacial. "That's what they do, kid," he said. "They don't care about the collateral damage, about how much money they will cost to people. They don't care if someone gets hurt. All it matters is to fill those numbers. Brings those villains in, get the reward. Like an office worker punching a card every single day, paying no mind to anyone else." "They can't all be like this," Izuku replied, frowning, without taking his eyes away from the battle. One of the villains was down, the other attempting to run away hastily. The Demolisher rolled the chain around the unconscious villain to bring them with him, as he went in pursuit of the other one. "He's just going to leave that poor woman behind," Izuku murmured, not even a question. Stain sighed. "Go down there, make sure she's okay," he said flat. "I know you want to. Be careful, keep your face hidden. If I see someone come in your direction, I'll whistle." Izuku didn't wait a second more, rapidly climbing down the building. When he landed a few meters away from her, the woman whimpered. To be fair, he probably didn't look very trustworthy, clad from head to toe in black clothing and dark boots at his feet, a heavy hood concealing most of his features, a dark bandana rolled over his mouth and nose to help keep his face hidden even more. "It's okay," Izuku murmured, raising both gloved hands up, palms toward her. "I don't want to hurt you. Are you wounded? Do you need an ambulance?" "I think my ankle might be broken," she let out, faint, her wide eyes pointed at him. "Who are you?" "It doesn't matter," Izuku replied, practical. "If it's broken, you better not move. Do you have a phone? You should call the emergency number." She fumbled with her purse, fishing out a phone with trembling hands. When she seemed to hesitate, Izuku gently took it away from her hand, composed the number for her and connected the call, before giving it back. She seemed unable to tear her eyes off of Izuku as she faintly answered the questions of the dispatcher at the other side. "They will arrive in a few minutes," she exhaled, softly, after closing the call. "Who are you?" "No one," Izuku replied, getting back up on his feet. Don't leave me here alone," she immediately sobbed. Izuku stood still for a few seconds, before speaking softly. "It will be okay," he promised. "I'll be watching you from above to make sure you'll be safe until the ambulance is here, okay?" She tried to call after him with a feeble "no" that immediately died in her throat, replaced by a surprised gasp as Izuku rapidly scaled the wall back up, disappearing into the dark to step by Stain's side once more. They silently watched over her, until the ambulance arrived. Izuku saw her glance up one last time, before she let the paramedics help her up in the vehicle. "Okay," Izuku finally conceded, flat, after the lights disappeared into the night. He acted like a jerkass. "But that doesn't mean they are all like this. Neither that you should kill them." "We will see," Stain replied, unfazed. Kaizome let the leash run loose. The kid was relentless. Ever since that night, when he first had a little taste of what these so-called heroes truly cared for, he seemed even more hell-bent in demonstrating that most heroes weren't so bad. But the real world kept slapping him in the face. It was admirable, still, how he just wouldn't give up. Every night they'd go out, patrol the street. Almost every night the kid would jump in a situation where state-sanctioned heroes did not. Stopping a brawl between a bunch of drunkards there, interrupting petty crimes at every angle, jumping in to stop a drag dealer, leaving him tied to a pole for the police to collect. The list kept going and going. Kaizome let him do as he pleased, keeping a watchful eye from above. He only had to intervene a couple of times in order to don't let the kid get seriously hurt, but for the most part, he let him accumulate experiences. They'd go back to the apartment at the first light of dawn, and he'd let the brat drag himself to the bathroom to lick his wounds, both literal and metaphorical. Every night he'd have a taste of why the system simply didn't work. And yet, he stubbornly refused to see Kaizome's points. He let him cry his tears after they watched the police haul away a man whose face had been thoroughly punched in. "What will happen to them?" the kid asked, quiet and somber, as they watched the two crying kids getting gently escorted toward another police car. "Who knows?" Kaizome replied with a little shrug. "I doubt they are going to let them go back home at this point." "Why did no one intervene?" the kid whispered after a long silence, trailing a finger on his own blood-stained knuckles. "They were crying for help. That's the limit you hit when you have to abide to rules set by a government," Kaizome said, crossing his arms on his chest. They had no concrete proof, even if they all knew, so they had no choice but to let those kids keep living with that monster. The boy released a soft growl, both hands closing into fists. "That's not right." "No, it's not. It shouldn't be like this. But that's how it is. That's what I'm fighting to change." The kid turned, eyeing him from behind his hood, eyes an infinite pool of sadness. "There must be any other way," he tried to protest weakly. "Well, I guess a hero could decide to act and intervene ignoring the rules completely. They would probably be more efficient. But that's called being a vigilante," Kaizome replied, tilting his head on his side. "You know what you are." The kid's eyes went wide, as if he only now realized that for the past 3 weeks he's been acting as a full-blown vigilante. Turns out intervening when necessary is considered illegal, depending on the circumstances. Kaizome continued, sarcastic. "Who would have thought, huh?" The kid tried to say, only to fall silent, eyes moving as he reflected. He slowly turned away, a frown setting on his features. "I still don't think killing is right." "You don't have to," Kaizome replied, flat. "You set your own rules, brat." The kid didn't speak another word for the rest of the night. Yes, Kaizome was keeping the leash loose, let the kid do his thing. Trying to spoon-feeding him the truth simply wasn't going to work. The brat had to taste things on his own skin to understand, exactly like Kaizome did before him. It wasn't long before he started to teach him how to properly use the blades. The brat just wouldn't stop, night after night, and Kaizome wasn't going to waste all the work he poured in him so far, even if it might have been far too early to put a real sword in his hands. Tokyo was a dangerous, unforgiving place. And if Kaizome had to train on his own, it didn't mean the kid had to do the same. He could at least make that a bit easier for him. Give him a way to properly defend himself as he kept pushing and pushing, unable and unwilling to give up or stop. Time flew by, as they watched the cold recede and give way to a timid start of spring from their small apartment. Out there, kids the same age as the brat were about to start a new chapter of their lives, full of hopes and dreams for the future. Here, in their own small world, Kaizome watched his little chick open bloody sores on his hands by training endlessly with the wooden blade in their little living room kitchen, all furniture pushed aside to give him space. His dull eyes were set forward, always looking towards something Kaizome was not part of. It was okay. Let the kid do his own thing. He'd come around. The leash was loose, but it was still there. Tensei was very tempted to just take the entire box and throw it out the window. This case was just endless new calls kept piling in every night, new sightings, new blurry photos, and yet, nothing could be done. Curse the day I accepted to work on this. He had enough on his hands with running the entirety of the IDA 10 office, but when he first heard of it, he just couldn't let go. It wasn't by far the first time he had to deal with a vigilante, but it was certainly one of the more sneaky ones he'd ever seen at work. Most vigilantes Tensei dealt with in the past had the tendency to be flashy, call attention to themselves. It wasn't hard, with those kind of outlaws, to find them and deal with them. Most were frustrated people that could never succeed in becoming a hero through the proper channels, and could be swayed to try again with more conviction. Those were probably Tensei's favorites. He had a couple of them legally hired in his office, after all. They were just people that were dealt a bad hand in the past, but with enough hard work and help could be easily be brought back on the right tracks. Others tended to be a bit more extreme. They'd have attitudes that could not mesh well with the work of a hero, tended not to make big splashes, preferring to work undisturbed for as long as possible, and when caught they'd inevitably end in prison due to their excessively violent acts. This vigilante seemed to have the same genuine intentions of the former, with a far more careful, stealthy attitude of the latter. No one, the people started calling him, apparently due to his constant answer to the question, "Who are you?" No one wasn't excessively violent, although there were a couple of episodes that could make you think otherwise, but they seemed to be outliers in his modus operandi. No one seemed to favor peaceful resolutions when possible, and when it wasn't he'd go for the least possible amount of damage to people and proprieties. No one didn't seem to like his fame nor searched for attention. He'd pop in on the scene, do what he must, and then disappear silently. His outfit was consistently described as normal. No flashy costumes or masks. Just black boots and pants. A black hoodie that covered his features and a black bandana on his face. Black thick gloves and black knees and elbows protection. The perfect kind of outfit to slip unseen into the dark of the night. Also, no one was recently spotted carrying an actual, honest-to-God wakizashi secured to his hip, although he never seemed to have made use of it since it was first noticed. And that was it. He didn't seem to have any particular area of interest. He'd pop on a side of the city one night, right on the opposite side the other. Not a single police agent nor hero ever managed to follow him, and those few who tried and succeeded for a short while found themselves suddenly in a hospital with big bumps on their heads and no memories of what hit them. He didn't seem to target specific crimes, either. He'd intervene where he was needed, regardless of who was involved, from beating up members of a drag cartel to leaving a kid that run away from home and got lost in front of a police station. No one also never showed an XPLCT, obvious quirk. There were many theories running wild among those that were involved in the investigation, but there simply wasn't a certain conclusion about what no one's quirk could do. Tensei, personally, leaned on the side of those that theorized some kind of invisibility or masking quirk that allowed no one his stealthy, traceless escapes. Would explain how he managed to knock unconscious anyone that tried to follow him without being noticed in the slightest, at the very least. It seemed simply impossible to catch this guy. Tensei was always up to try reform some vigilantes and shape them into full-fledged heroes, but no one truly seemed like a lost cause after months of failures and dead ends. "Hey, Chief," he got distracted, jumping when one of his underlings, Yamamoto, knocked on the door jamb of his office. "You look like you've got a bit of cabin fever. Why don't you go out for a patrol tonight?" Tensei groaned, stretching his spine, hearing a series of little pops. "You're not wrong," he admitted with a sigh. "Looking over that case again, huh?" Yamamoto commented with a lopsided smile, approaching the desk. "For the I don't know, probably 1,000th time." Tensei muttered, massaging his forehead. "Tons of sightings, no new leads as usual." "Well, all more the reasons to go take a walk in the real world," Yamamoto laughed, abandoning a small pile of papers on his desk. "Who knows, maybe you could stumble into the guy in some back alley or something." "Wouldn't that be funny?" Tensei deadpanned, before rising on his feet and grabbing his helmet. "You've got a point though. I think some action will help." He made 3 easily avoidable, very stupid mistakes that night. The first was spotting a man that suspiciously looked like the hero killer on a roof, and let himself freeze in obvious surprise. The second was following first, and only secondly trying to call for reinforcements, giving him the time to destroy his helmet with a scarily precise series of knives throws, effectively cutting Tensei off of communication. The third was not immediately running away. Tensei went down like a puppet after he felt all his limbs lock into place, as if they suddenly turned into iron, completely outside of his control. He tried uselessly to turn, get up, move at all, but he couldn't. The blood run down on his face from the cut on his cheek, as the hero killer emerged from the dark, towering over him. "Got a big one tonight, huh?" he commented, flat. "And to think I wasn't even out and about to hunt." Tensei gritted his teeth, trying uselessly to fight against his own body. Stain's eyes burned like fire as he looked down at him. Oi, wait a minute. Tensei twitched in surprise. The voice that just spoke seemed to come from above and sounded quite young too. Much to his shock, Stain rolled his eyes with a little sigh. Here we go, he exhaled in exasperation. Another twitch shook him when a second figure landed from the darkness above. Someone completely dressed in black, a hood shadowing their features, and a wakizashi attached to their hip. No way. Tensei thought to himself, eyes going wide. No effing way. No one was much smaller in person than the unfocused, blurry pictures of him could lead to believe. He probably wouldn't even reach Tensei's shoulders if they were to stand side by side. Do you know who this is? No one asked, affronted, gesturing vaguely down at Tensei. Course I do. Stain replied, long-suffering. Brat. No, don't you brat me. No one interrupted, crossing his arms on his chest and impatiently tapping a foot on the ground. Give me one good reason why you should kill Ingenium. His height, his voice, his mannerisms. Stain just called him brat. Is no one a kid? Really now? Stain deadpanned, unamused. He's the epitome of what's wrong with the hero system. He's the head of a huge company, as if heroes can be controlled like office workers, and you ask me for reasons? That's not a reason though. No one replied, shifting to put both hands in fists on his hips. He's working with what he has. And he's doing a damn good job of it. Just last week one of his lackeys let a shop burn to the ground. Yes, one of the other heroes working for him, not him. The pause. He's a good one and you know it. Tensei could speak if he wanted. He could. His paralysis didn't seem to extend to his tongue or vocal cords. But he simply had nothing to say as he followed the rapid-fire exchange like he was watching a game of tennis. Stain groaned, dragging a hand on his face. Why can I not go back in time and slap myself in the face? He muttered, low, before adding. You are such a pain in my butt. It's like having a semi-suicidal Jiminy Cricket on my shoulder all the dim in time with you. What now? No one replied, confused. You've never seen that old animated movie Nevermind. Stain sighed, waving a hand. He put his katana back in its sheath, looking unamused. Fine. Watch, this is going to bite the both of us in our butts in 2 months top. I'll take it. No one said, satisfied. Dude. Be more careful next time. He then added, clearly addressing Tensei, before the both of them scaled the building up to the roof they came from like a couple of really strange lizards. Tensei just stayed there, speechless. Even if he hadn't been still paralyzed, he might have not moved regardless. He was sure his brain might just leak out of his nose, for hard it has been blown. No one was a kid. Tensei was ready to bet his goddamn right hand about that. He sounded young, he acted young. No one was familiar enough with the hero killer to address him with not only absolutely no fear, but a certain amount of cheekiness as well. And the hero killer seemed to keep no one's opinion in a regard high enough to have his mind changed by him on the spot. No one had a wakizashi, an old-fashioned weapon, much like Stain's signature katana. They moved in similar ways as they scaled the building, quick and agile. Holy shit. Holy fing crap. Tensei thought, wide eyes staring at polluted dark sky. Are those two working together? Is Stain teaching no one? Could a man like him even think to take a disciple under his wing? Is no one willingly working side by side with a serial killer? No answer to his mental questions came, as he finally felt the tenseness leave his limbs. He could move again, and he dragged himself slowly upright, sitting in the alley and carting a hand through his sweaty hair. What the actual F is going on? Chapter 5. Ballata per la mia piccola iena. The boy suddenly went pale and still, like a rabbit freezing in front of a wolf. Kaizone blinked, watching him out the corner of his eye. He watched as the boy slowly put down the bowl he was holding, fingers shivering minutely. He watched as he brought his right hand to his lips and nervously nibbled down on his fingers, worked all the tiny, lithe scars on them under his chipped tooth. Almost like a toddler's skiing on his own thumb. From the battered, small TV came the sounds of fireworks going off. His green dull eyes were transfixed on the screen, his soup going completely ignored. The over-enthusiastic voice filled the room for long minutes, until the boy suddenly got up on his feet, with a stillness that spoke of an imposed calmness, and turned away, walking toward the tiny corridor connecting the living room to the bathroom. A minute later, came the sound of retching. Kaizome sighed softly, getting up and walking to the bathroom himself as the sound of the flushing water filled his ears. When he stepped in, the boy was curled up in a corner, a nervous ball of limbs, face hidden in his knees. His hair was still much shorter than it was when they first met, but it was rapidly growing back. "I'm okay," he whispered, flat, before Kaizome could even ask. "I just need a minute." He waited, leaning on the door jamb. Behind them, from the living room, the TV yelled. "And the winner of the obstacle race is Katsuki Bakugu." In the days that followed, the kid just stopped talking altogether. He was far away, like a ghost, his eyes plunged in a darkness so deep it was reminiscent of the kind of look Kaizome saw on his face during their first meeting. He'd still work his own routine. Train, sleep, go out at night, do his vigilante thing. Rinse and repeat. Day after day, silent, a shadow moving about. Kaizome wasn't sure what to do about this, other than leaving him be and keeping a watchful eye over him as he's been doing in the past few months. But he could feel it. The boy was slipping through his fingers, turning even more reckless, like he didn't care about his own life. Which, to be fair, he probably didn't. All that work, Kaizome sighed to himself, dragging a hand over his face. They had a silent, mutual deal. Don't ask about the past, don't tell about it. Putting aside that one time he purposefully asked after the boy's father, Kaizome upheld his side of the deal. Neither of them cared much for that, preferring to move forward. But now, the deal was definitely biting them in the butt. Whatever baggage the kid brought with him must have increased in weight tenfold. And there was apparently nothing Kaizome could do about it. He watched over him, silent, and hoped whatever funk the boy fell into would soon go away. "You," the man laughed nervously, sweating profusely and trembling. "You think yourself so sneaky, don't you? You think we haven't taken notice, but we have. Everyone has. If you have to speak, do so clearly." Kaizome replied, flat and unimpressed, pushing the blade on the man's neck a bit more. He let out another, trembly hysterical chuckle. "The kid," he released with a wheeze. "That brat that follows you everywhere the heroes and the police might be too stupid to realize, but us? Oh no, we have long taken notice. We've been looking at him very closely." The sentence died in a wet gurgle as Kaizome slid the blade in and sideways with a single, smooth motion. The man's eyes went glassy and he stopped moving in a few seconds. Kaizome forced himself to slow down his breathing, closing his eyes. His heart was beating in his throat like a painful knot. He opened his eyes again, glaring down hatefully at the still bleeding corpse, before cleaning the tip of his katana on the body's pants and put it back in the sheath. He turned, rapidly climbing up. He and the kid got separated after the deadman brat went in pursuit of one of these idiots even after Kaizome tried to call him back, as another goon tried to step in his way. Where could he be? Goddamn stupid kid, never listening, always doing whatever stupid bullshit runs through his head. If he let himself get dragged into a trap, I swear to God, I'm going to gut him myself. He searched and searched, jumping from roof to roof, but found not a trace of the kid nor the guy he was chasing. The sky was starting to lighten and, with a furious growl, Kaizome had no choice but to start the walk back home. They had a protocol in case they got separated, but it never happened before. Much to his dismay, the door was untouched and the apartment empty, once he got inside as the first rays of sunlight peeked over the horizon. He approached the bathroom window, removing the trap, and then he nervously got out of his suit, launching it in a ball in a corner, securing his katana on his hip as he paced back and forth. The kid slid through the bathroom window, as per protocol, almost an hour later. He dragged the hood off his head and removed the blood-stained bandana from his face. His face was a triumph of purples and blues, dried smears of blood under his nose and chin, and the right side of his face was swollen, almost closing his eye shut. "You should have seen the other guy," he said, almost jokingly, after days of absolute, utter silence. The slap echoed in the tiny bathroom. The kid turned his face right back to him with a betrayed look, eyes huge, as he rose his hand to rest it on his cheek. "Are you even thinking?" Kaizome hissed, furious, grabbing the front of the kid's hoodie in a tight fist, shaking him. "You fell in a obvious trap. Even a toddler wouldn't have fallen for that. What the F are you doing?" The kid uttered, voice trembling. But Kaizome continued, shaking him again. "I don't know what the F has gotten into you this past week, and I don't even care," he growled. "But I won't allow you to waste any more of my time or work. You've done that more than enough." What? He let the kid go with a violent shove, sending him against the sink after ripping the wakizashi away from his hip. The kid stood there, mouth open and hands collected against his chest, as Kaizome stalked out the bathroom. It didn't took him much to gather the kid's measly possessions and stuff them into his backpack. After a few minutes, he also got out the bathroom, wobbling on his feet, clearly confused. He stumbled a couple of steps back when Kaizome launched the full backpack against his chest. "Change out of your suit and then get out." He hissed. "We are done." What? The kid exhaled, eyes huge. "You heard me." Kaizome replied, impassive. "You're clearly not fit for this. You're letting whatever shitty personal issue you got cloud your judgment and get in the way of your work. You're a constant nuisance for my work, jumping in with your silly moral hang-ups and causing me trouble. This is it. You're out." The backpack fell on the floor. The kid stumbled forward, grabbing Kaizome's forearm. He hiccuped, eyes filling with tears. I'm sorry, I won't. I'll be good, I promise. I won't be a nuisance anymore. I'll do whatever you say, just please." Kaizome pushed him away, glaring down. "You're too soft-hearted. Needy. You're not fit for this life. I don't need a brat that can't let go of his childish hopes and dreams to hold me down." The pause. "I put enough money in your bag to cover the trip and any expense you might need. Go back home, brat. You're not needed here." A sob wrecked the kid as he folded in himself, hands pushed on his chest. Big tears hit the floor as he shivered there, unmoving. After a good full minute, Kaizome stomped his foot down, making him jump. "I told you to get out," he exclaimed as the kid turned his bruised, tears-covered face up to him, lost and desperate. "Get changed and go. If you're not gone in the next 5 minutes, I'll throw you out myself." Releasing a pitiful whine, the kid turned away, stumbling back in the bathroom. Kaizome stood there, unmoving as he heard the water running for a bit, and then the kid re-emerged in the living room, face clean from blood and wearing a set of anonymous everyday clothes instead of his black vigilante outfit. He was shivering, avoiding Kaizome's pointed eyes, tears still streaming down his face as he picked up his backpack and hugged it on his chest, approaching the door. He hesitated there for a second, turning a little hopeful look toward Kaizome, but when Kaizome ignored him he made a small sound, like a mouse being stepped on, and finally got out. Kaizome watched him run away from the tiny kitchen window. The kid's wakizashi was in his backpack. Hopefully he won't have to use it. Izuku ran and ran, his lungs burning and his legs hurting. He ran until he could not anymore, until his limbs gave in, and he finally stopped, stumbling under a bridge, in the shadows, away from prying eyes. He let himself fall back, squeezing his full backpack against his chest, wheezing, painful breaths running through his throat and lungs, burning along the way. His face stung and throbbed, but he still pushed it forcefully against the coarse texture of the backpack, releasing a broken, loud whine, muffled in it. It felt like a dam just broke in him, more whines climbing out his throat as sobs wrecked him and a fresh wave of tears rolled down his cheeks. He simply could not stop, lamenting like a wounded animal, feeling like his chest was crumbling into tiny little pieces with every sobs and painful hiccup of breath he managed to get in. Useless, 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 couldn't even manage to do this right, useless dead weight. No one needs you, you are just a stupid Deku, no one will ever want you. You just ruin anything you touch, you can't do anything right, you're just a nuisance. He cried and cried until he simply didn't have any more tears, until his sobs became dry and slowly subsided, and his eyes stung painfully without having anything else to give. He slowly stretched his sore legs in front of him, resting the backpack in his lap, staring at nothing. He was tired, completely spent. His head simply stopped being capable of forming a coherent sentence. He slowly looked around. There was a dark corner behind a pillar of the bridge, even more hidden. He forced himself to wobble back up on his feet, dragged himself there. He put the backpack down, rolled on his side in a tight little ball, resting his head on his bag, and fell asleep, his chest hurting with every little beat of his heart. When he woke, it took him a long minute to remember and understand why he was so uncomfortable and his nose was full of the smell of dust and dirt. He slowly dragged himself in a sitting position. His body hurt after the beating he took, and his face felt even more swollen. He couldn't see out of his right eye anymore. Tears rolled down his cheeks, eyes painfully stinging. Apparently, he still had some to give. What the f do I do now? He thought to himself, desperate and bitter. I fed up once again. Good fing job. With a sigh, he dragged himself back on his feet, painfully sore. He stumbled toward the water. It looked and smelled disgusting, so he took a deep breath and held it, before splashing his face. The chilly sensation brought him a tiny amount of relief, but only for a few seconds. He peered at his reflection in the muddy water, grimacing. His face looked like a misshapen blueberry, for how swollen and blue with bruises it was. He couldn't go around like this. He walked back to his backpack, rapidly found his dark blue hat and a scarf. He put it low on his head, wrapped the scarf around his nose and mouth. As long as he kept his head low, no one should notice how beat up he was. He put the backpack on his shoulders, dusting the dirt away from his knees once he stood once more. Slowly he walked away, climbing back up toward the road. It was probably mid-afternoon, going by the position of the sun. He started to walk. He didn't even know why, but he couldn't just stand in the middle of the road. So he walked, keeping to the side roads away from the more trafficked areas. People that passed by didn't spare him a second look, too busy with their own lives, chatting with one another. He didn't want to think, but he had no other choice. He was alone once more, with nothing to his name but a backpack with some clothes, a bottle of water, and whatever money Stain gave him. He choked on a sob, tears filling his eyes. Don't think about him, don't think about him, don't think about him. Go home. You're not needed here. Going home? Could he even do that anymore? Going home to what? Mom probably wasn't sad anymore at this point, she'd just be rightfully furious if he came back with his tail between his legs. She'd be so angry that he wasted so much time, missed the start of high school, caused her so many worries, only for him to come back, beaten into Espiamton once more. He couldn't go home. He had no home anymore. Maybe he could try to go back to the little rundown house in the forest. He was happy, there he knew how to survive, now, and he could go there, no other human in sight, just him and him. But he didn't really know how to go back there. Stain always took care of the moving, and Izuku trusted him blindly, following like an idiot puppy desperate for praise. That's what Izuku was, wasn't he? Just a dumb brat, a little kid so starved for attention, he followed the first person that showed him even the tiniest amount of interest. He followed like a dog on a leash, eager to serve, and now that the leash was off he didn't know what to do with himself anymore. He couldn't keep being a vigilante. He didn't had a home to retire to and tend to his wounds anymore. He didn't had support, nor enough money or gear. He didn't had someone watching his back at all times. Without Stain, he was nothing. Without Stain, he was just a dumb, quirkless kid. He was who he was. This was who he was. A 15 years old, that run away from home months ago after attempting suicide, that followed an infamous serial killer and let himself getting trained by said serial killer, working side by side as a vigilante with him in the busiest city of Japan for weeks and weeks. Oh, Izuku exhaled, blinking, stopping in the middle of the road. He was staring ahead, but he couldn't really see what was in front of him. Oh, what have I done? He asked to himself, voice breaking. But no answer came. The room was minuscule, basically a broom closet, but he couldn't care less. He paid up front. The guy looked sketchy as hell but accepted his proposition, even if Izuku looked like a punching bag, so Izuku wasn't going to complain. He had enough money to last him a bit, if he made sure to be careful with his expenses. The room would serve him just fine, while he took a bit of time to decide what to do. The sheer magnitude of the realization, truly understanding what he had made of his life, left him breathless and devoid of energy. He just wanted to curl up in a corner and sleep. Possibly, never wake up. In the end, he just run in a circle. He was back there, contemplating. What would be the best way to kill himself? He could slash his arteries, it'd be quick enough. Jumping off a building was too messy, and there was the concrete possibility they'd never recognize his body. Bleeding himself out would at least leave behind a corpse they could give back to Mom, so she could grieve. But did he want that? Did he want her to grieve? Maybe it'd be better if he jumped into a river. The water could drag his body far into the ocean, and no one would have to know he was dead. Mom wouldn't need to go through the pitiful operation of having to identify Izuku's body, arrange a funeral for him, and cry herself dry over a picture of him, or something. With a sigh, he fully opened his backpack and emptied it with a single decisive shake, so he could reorganize his few possessions. Something heavy fell on the tatami flooring with a muted thud. Izuku blinked, finding himself staring at his wakizashi. Slowly, as if he was scared he'd get burned if he touched it, he tentatively slid his fingertips over the handle. He grabbed it, unsheathing it with an ominous little metallic sound. The blade shone under the orange, weak light of the lamp hanging from the ceiling. He didn't pack his wakizashi. Hell, Stain ripped it away from him angrily as he told him to get out. Izuku blinked, eyes going wide. Stain packed his bag. Stain put his wakizashi there. And not only that, there was an holster too. Izuku silently shed the hoodie he was wearing, securing the familiar holster on his chest, and fixed the wakizashi on it, before covering the whole thing with his oversized clothing once more. Stain gave him a precious, expensive weapon, with the clear intention of having Izuku wear it at all times. A safety measure against their many enemies, maybe? A way to let Izuku have at least a small amount of protection against the world? For what? Why would he care? He purposefully chased Izuku away, told him what a dead weight he truly was. Or did he? He got angry after Izuku fell for a stupid trap, even if he came out of it alive. He got angry because he disobeyed and ran after that guy, even after Stain yelled at him to stop. Could it be that Stain was trying to protect him? Part of him scoffed. Told him to stop dreaming. Stop acting like a lovesick puppy. But what if that was what happened? What if Stain tried to chase him back home, so Izuku could be safe? The wakizashi was heavy on his chest. He had to make sure he had to find out. Izuku postponed his death. A few more days weren't going to make that much of a difference, and he knew exactly where and how to gather some info to maybe clarify this for him. And if he was wrong, well, then he'd make the choice between the river or cutting his veins open. Death wasn't going anywhere. No one wanted to believe Tensei at first. A kid? Come on, that's ridiculous. You're just making assumptions. He can't be a kid. Have you seen the things he does? But Tensei did not give up. He knew what he saw and heard. He knew that no one was a kid. He was absolutely certain. And it didn't sit well with him. At all. He not only owed that child his life, he owed him to go to the bottom of things. To try save him. A kid following a serial killer, probably getting trained by him? How did that happen? Was he coerced in some way? He must have been, or maybe Stain picked him up between the midst of the villains. Stain wasn't new to acts of vigilantism himself, and his death toll included more villains than heroes, despite his infamous name of hero killer. There were so many realities of poverty, so many people forced to work for clans and villains in order to survive, and these people often had families of their own. Maybe Stain picked up the child up after he went on a rampage on a group of villains. For all his violence, there were no children between Stain's victims. He was a monster with his own set of rules. Maybe he saw potential in the kid. He surely had plenty, going by his actions as a vigilante. Maybe he just wanted someone to follow in his steps, and a lone, convenient kid was just what he needed. But there must be more to it. Stain actually abided by no one's request to spare Tensei's life, and no one seemed averse to his mentor's method of dealing with heroes that smelled less of a teacher-disciple relationship and more of something that put the both of them on equal footing. Maybe no one was Stain's biological child. It certainly was a possibility. And discovering Stain was somehow involved made sense. Those strange, violent outlier episodes in no one's track record, the fact that he seemed to have a protective shadow that allowed him an escape even when he was followed. Stain must have been looking after the kid all this time, but why? The more Tensei thought about it, the less sense it made, but he needed to do something. There was a child out there, running around in the middle of the night doing dangerous vigilante stunts, with a serial killer as his guardian. By God, Tensei would find this child, even if it was the last thing he did. For a while he was the only one in the investigation team following the child lead. The other heroes and agents were simply too incredulous about his outrageous declaration and kept focusing on other traces. Tensei stubbornly doubled down on it, sleeping 3 hours a night for days, as he read over a worrying long list of children that would be under the age of 18 that disappeared between the last 10 years. It was an ungrateful, depressing job. There were so many all along the country. 10 years was a long time to cover. Empty coffee cups collected on his desk, and he delegated all the Ida-10 related work he could in order to chase the lead. Slowly, some of the others involved in the case started getting around to his idea. Tensei worked his throat raw to reiterate over and over his encounter with Stain and no one's mannerism and speech pattern, his size, and his voice. Soon enough he wasn't the only one looking into the depressingly long list of vanished kids. They slowly started to shrink the realm of possibilities based on age and gender, on registered quirks, possible health issues, but there were still so many names to comb over, it was unreal. Tensei had no idea that a crucial piece of information, what was truly about to turn this investigation upside down, came in the form of a small, determined woman that wouldn't leave them alone. She came one day, asking to speak with whoever was responsible of the investigation of the vigilante called No One. The agents at the desks tried to convince her to release a statement if she thought she had some useful info, but she refused to do so until she could speak with someone higher up on the chain. She came day after day, asking the same thing, refusing to just release a mere statement. She insisted in wanting to speak directly with the investigators, stating that she was going to get directly involved in this. This happened for an entire week, until Tensei just so happened to walk into the station right by her side, unknowingly. He was just about to get his usual badge, scratching his head and yawning, when he heard one of the agents sigh patiently. "Miss, we've been over this, we can't let you in. If you want to release a statement." Tensei's eyes went wide and he turned. The woman was small, but held herself with the posture of a soldier. She had dark green hair cut short, shorter than Tensei's own, and soft cheeks that hinted to the possibility she might have been a soft, plump woman once. She still carried some weight, but had the look of someone that lost a lot in a very short time. Her green eyes were lit with a mix of determination and desperation, her mouth a thin, unamused line. "You know what my answer to that is?" She replied, glacial. "I will be waiting all day. I will be waiting my entire life, if necessary." Tensei shifted his weight foot to foot, grabbed his badge, and approached her. "Miss, my name is Tensei Ida." He introduced himself, holding a hand out. "Mr. Ingenium." One of the agents hissed, exasperated. "No, let me take care of this." Tensei replied, holding a hand up. "I will take full responsibility." He turned toward her once more. "My hero name is Ingenium, you might have heard of me." "Of course I did." She snapped, not taking his hand. "Then, I want to let you know that I am currently involved in the search for the vigilante called No One." Tensei said, stubbornly keeping his hand stretched forward. "I've been involved since the case was opened. I would like to hear what you have to say." She examined his face with the gaze of a hawk, before taking his hand. He guided her in his momentary office at the police station. What she saw inside, with the piles of files precariously perched on every flat surfaces, the map of Tokyo where every single sighting of No One was pinned, along with blurry pictures printed and fixed on a whiteboard, must have been satisfying enough to her, because she resolutely nodded, sitting down in the chair Tensei offered her. "My name is Inko Midoriya." She immediately started off, practical. "Almost 7 months ago my only son, Izuku, disappeared." She rummaged in the little suitcase on her lap, taking out a picture and offering it to Tensei. As of his last measurements, he was 165 centimeters tall. Green curly hair, green eyes, freckled cheeks. Tensei hummed, taking the picture. "Can I keep this?" Nodded, he walked to the whiteboard and fixed the picture there. The kid in it smiled back at him with soft features and bright green eyes, wearing an All Might shirt. Once done with that, Tensei walked toward the stadiometer in the corner and adjusted it to the 165 mark, observing it, pensive. Height looked about right. "So you think your son might be the vigilante called No One?" Tensei said, turning back toward her. "I don't think." She replied, voice low. "I'm certain of it." "What makes you so sure?" Tensei asked, serious, walking around his desk and dragging his laptop close in the clutter. Izuku, ever since he was a little kid, his biggest dream was to become a great hero like All Might, she started, forlorn. But he could not. "Why?" "He's quirkless," Midoriya replied, locking a pained gaze with Tensei. Tensei jumped, surprised, fingers stilling on the keyboard. "He's quirkless. No one never shown any kind of quirk. Could it be?" "Please go on." Tensei invited her, softly, starting to type in notes once more. It was a hard hit on him, but he was only for I thought that, with time as he grew he would forget about it. Find himself another road to follow. His admiration for heroes never went away, but I thought nothing of it. It was just a passion, a hobby. The pause. But for him it wasn't. In his room I found this stack of notebooks filled to the brim. Quirk analysis, pattern studies, strategies to deal with villains. Izuku, he's very smart. On the cover, there was written, "Analysis for the future." Tensei flinched minutely, but said nothing. She took a deep breath, before continuing. "I never realized he was still thinking about it. I never realized so many things about him. He was always an obedient, calm child. A good student, all high marks. He never gave me reasons to worry for him, but I should have." A little sigh. She angrily wiped tears away from her eyes. "I should have. He went through so much that I did not know of. His classmates bullied him relentlessly for years, due to his being quirkless. Who I thought was his best friend turned to be his worst tormentor, constantly berating and humiliating him, even inviting him to commit suicide, a angry sniff. During the months leading to his disappearance, he slowly changed. He became more quiet, less lively. He would eat less. I thought nothing of it. Teenagers can be so moody, right? But then he tried to jump off the roof at his school." Tensei flinched again, more visibly, this time. She looked at him, her eyes almost speaking, as if saying, "This is nothing yet." "He convinced me it was a mistake, that the people at school saw something else. I let myself get convinced." Her voice turned bitter, like poison. I didn't want to see the truth. Without telling me, he stopped going to school. I figured he was just absolutely done with the people that pushed him to the brink of suicide, and who knows what he's been doing out there that entire month. But one day the principal came by, asking me how Izuku was doing after his suicide attempt, and there I was, completely clueless that my son spent the last month of his life wandering the streets alone. When he came home, I confronted him. I was so crushed, in that moment, realizing what I've been blind to the entire time. I was already planning ahead about what to do to help him, and in doing so, I only made yet another mistake. I should have spoke with him that night. He went out. He never came back. She crossed her fingers in her lap, looking down at them. After a week of desperate searches, the police retrieved his shoes and keys from the riverbank. They declared him dead, but they are still searching for a body. Everyone thinks he succeeded in killing himself, but I knew my son was alive, so I set on my own search. Turns out there's a lot you can discover when you have the time and desperation to spend your entire life searching for your lost son." There was self-deprecation in her voice, a cold smile on her lips. "I found out a little episode that went mostly under the radar. A young pro-hero, and in turn, met a certain infamous figure one night. A man named the Hero Killer Stain." Tensei's mouth went slack, and her expression turned almost smug. That night, this young pro-hero was almost about to lose his life to the hero killer, but someone intervened. The pro-hero couldn't see his face, as it was concealed, But he noticed two things he told me he could not forget. His voice, the voice of a kid, and his bright red shoes. Like the ones retrieved in the riverbank. Like the shoes Izuku always wore. The pro-hero said that the kid and the hero killer exchanged words. The kid advocated for Stain to spare the hero's life, and, amazingly enough, Stain accepted. He said that the kid approached Stain, and upon his attempt to tell him to run away, the kid replied, "He won't hurt me." They went away together, and that was all this pro-hero could tell me. That was enough for me to know that the kid must have been Izuku. It's just like him, to step in front of a serial killer in order to help someone. The reason why Izuku willingly went with Stain, I do not know for sure, although I have a theory in any case. I went after that single lead. I searched and searched and searched, followed that faint lead that seemed to end nowhere until I miraculously found someone that remembered seeing a tall, well-built man that always kept his face covered and a teenager with green eyes and freckles on a train to Tokyo now. Imagine my surprise when I get to Tokyo and find out that a new vigilante appeared in town. A vigilante that seems hell-bent in helping as many people as he can. A vigilante that seems to always follow around a dangerous serial killer. A vigilante that seems to be rather young too. Probably a kid. How do you know these things? Tensei asked, slowly. We've been keeping the investigation under a tight wrap. I got out there, I got my hands dirty and spoke with the lowest of the low. She replied, promptly. I dealt with people that stain themselves with heinous crimes for information. I'm not a saint, Mr. Ida. I'm ready to do anything to get my son back. Now, let's play a guessing game. On a side we have a child that is desperately trying to play hero, even if he's doing it illegally, and on the other a famous serial killer whose ideas he preached included a distaste for current society's obsession with flashy quirks that make for a good show. And then there's my son, that has dreamt of being a hero since he was 2 years old, who is quirkless, and has been cruelly and mercilessly teased and bullied for it. My son, meeting a man that probably wouldn't see him as a useless deadweight on society just because of his lack of a quirk, a man that, in his twisted ways, believes in heroes more than anything else. Now, I wonder. Would you ask me again why I'm so sure that the vigilante called No One is truly my son, Mr. Ida? His head spun violently, and in a second he was on the floor. He tried to move, get up, but failed miserably as the world around him went round and round. A big false step there, hero killer, a voice above him, a cruel chuckle. I wonder, could it be that you were distracted? It's not like you, to make mistakes like these. He drunkenly patted down his thigh, searching for the knife. There a stabbing pain in his hand and he grunted, pain cutting his head in half. Noha, no little games. You're Arsna. Do not worry, we will have plenty of time to play. The night is long. Kaizome tried to look up, hissing. By the time the sun rises, you pieces of sheet will all be dead. Oh, we'll see, the man replied, a cold smile on his lips. We will see. That cold smile was the last thing Kaizome saw, before a blinding pain overcame him, turning his world dark.